If I can start to get everybody to their seats. It is, yeah. Just for information tonight, we will be removing the study item on Derby, and we will also be canceling the GID at the end of the City Council meeting. So if anybody is here for either one of those items, realize that they will be removed from the agenda at the appropriate time. You're okay. I'm not rushing you, especially when you're in heels. I will not be responsible.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Before we get started also, in case anybody forgets who I am, I'm actually Paul Natal. And for the past 3 weeks, Mayor Pro Tem Snyder has been filling in for me, and she did an absolutely phenomenal job, and I want to again thank her very much for doing that.
My pleasure.
I definitely appreciate it. It did get me a chance to get away, and it was an interesting trip. Every time I leave, I am more impressed with the United States. It's like I had said on one of my blogs, is that we have freedoms here in the USA that the other countries don't even realize exist. So it has been quite an education for me. Okay, City Council meeting for July 11th, 2011 now come to order. Remember, all the times indicated next agenda items are approximate start times only. Please turn off all your cell phones for the duration of the meeting. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Yes, please press your the light that is flashing at the dais to show that you are present as I call your name. Mayor Natal?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Snyder?
Here.
Councilman Moreno?
Present.
Councilman Benson?
Here.
Councilwoman Carson?
Here.
Councilwoman Teeter?
Here.
Councilman Diaz?
Here.
Councilman McEldowney?
Here.
Councilman Bullock?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Will the audience and council please rise for a moment of silence and then join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance?
Could we also do a minute of silence for Bud Mitchell? He was a founder of Mitchell Campers and part of the Mitchell family over here on 64th. He passed away, and his funeral's tomorrow at 9:30 at Highlands Oilingers up on 102nd.
Okay.
And also Bob Gaylor's brother.
Yes. Excellent. I'm glad you remembered.
A community that lost a baby before it was even born. So the Hager family as well to keep in mind.
Okay. Thank you. Any other requests? Okay. Thank you. Pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would the staff with the microphone please start passing it around, please?
Pam Spratler.
Betty Thomas.
Danny Thomas.
Mac McFarland.
Robbie Robertson.
Jacob Boudreau.
Thomas Stout. Rocco Leone. Ernest Phipps.
Leanna Phipps.
Maura O'Neill.
Guillermo Serna.
Crystal Elliott.
Sean Ford.
Samantha Ford?
Delbert Stallsworth. David Stallsworth.
Joy Bishop.
Gene Leffel, Board of Adjustment.
Michelle Rogers, City Manager's Office.
Greg Clemens, Public Works Department.
John Howard, Information Technology.
Roger Tinkenberg, Finance.
Chris Kramer, Planning Division.
Jim Hayes, Community Development. Ms. Ryan Cordero, Government Relations.
Rich Gonzalez, United Power.
Ron Ashe, United Power.
Carl Hoops, Citizen.
Phil Baca, Chief of Police.
Julie Jacoby, Economic Development.
Michelle Hill, Economic Development.
Brittany Morris, Economic Development Director.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Stevens, should I make a motion to remove the study item? Would that be, okay. I would welcome a motion to Ms. Snyder to remove one item from our study session from tonight.
Yes, move to remove the study session on Derby this evening.
Okay, Ms. Teeter.
Second the motion?
A motion and a second to remove the study item on the Derby. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. That item will be removed. Okay, the next item on the agenda is citizen communication. There were two rosters available at the table at the entrance of council chambers for those who wish to address council. One roster was for non-agenda items, and the second is for action items listed on the agenda. When I call your name, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You're reminded that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. City Council is reminded they are not to engage in discussion or debate, but may ask clarifying questions and express concern when appropriate. City Manager will generally assign staff members to get the necessary information to solve issues. We have a number of people, just to start this off, we have a number of people who are here to speak on one particular item that will be handled during the study session, but it is not during our regular meeting. Myself and Councilperson Diaz were at a meeting that was supposed to be held as for citizens on this particular item, and the company that called the meeting threw a sign up on the door and just said we won't be there. So that's what caused people. We offered to have them just come down and talk to us tonight. They understand that it's going to be 3 minutes. The first person on the list is Maura O'Neill. Good evening.
I'm Maura O'Neill. I live at 15349 East 101st Way, and I'm here on behalf of Cultural Council tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council and staff. I just wanted to stop in and say thank you so much for your support. We have our concert series this month every Thursday, and we were very disappointed that we had to cancel our first concert on last Thursday. So I just wanted to invite everyone to this Thursday's concert at River Run Park at 6:30 p.m. Duke Street Kings is going to kick us off. And once again, just thank you so much for your incredible support. Couldn't have done it without you, and we're very excited to be having this program and hope you guys can come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
River Run, about 116th and Peoria. Okay, the next person on the list is Jacob, is it Boudon? Boudot. I was close, but not close enough. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm here to talk, to speak of the concerns we have as citizens.
Before you start, could I just get your address, please?
8790 Brighton Road.
Okay, thank you.
And they're proposing to put a medical waste facility in our neighborhood, and I'm here to express my objection to that waste disposal. This property has been abused by Fiore and Sons. They took over this property with the intent to do something that they didn't do. They did other things that they said they wouldn't do, and they're actually leasing the property out now, and they're still dumping ash in that property. And now they're proposing to do put a medical waste disposal. This waste comes from other states, other parts of the state, or other states, and I don't see why it has to be put in the middle of our neighborhood where our children live and play. We already live in the most contaminated county in the whole United States, even more than Nevada. And I find it absurd that this would be put in our backyards, being able to put it in their own states, wherever this waste is coming from. Why is it coming to our backyards? Why is it being dumped where our children are exposed to it? and we're already polluted. If we look out the back window, we have a mountain that we're still bearing pollution from the 60s and from the 50s, and we're still trying to cover that up. And now we're proposing to put something right in the middle of our neighborhood. And I object strongly to that, and I'd like my objection to be noted.
Okay.
Excuse me, sir, could I have the spelling of your last name?
B as in boy, U, D as in David, O-W.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, sir.
Thank you for hearing me.
Okay.
Good evening.
Next person. Mr. Bullock?
Do the people that are speaking on behalf of this medical waste know that there's going to be a planning commission meeting in Adams County and a board of commissioners meeting to discuss the same thing, and they can make their voices heard at these meetings? Because our objection to it probably would be the same as yours, but it isn't in the city, it's in the county. So when the meetings are held at the county, we will probably have people, if we're objecting to it, going before their planning commission and objecting to it at that same time also. So, but I don't want you to miss it because of the fact that you're here and thinking this is going to take the place of it. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, but I've been to these meetings before, and we need your help, because our experience in these meetings are that the deal has been sealed by the time we get there. Our objections aren't heard. This has already been taken care of. Behind the walls, it's already been done. And I've been to these meetings, and that's why I came here today, to plead my case, our neighborhood, for our families and for our children, because our voices won't be heard over there. That meeting is just a formality. It means nothing. I've been there, I've done that, and it is a formality. You go in there and you object you make your objections, and they stamp their approval on it anyway. They go whoever's the last one I went to was Fiore and Sons. Fiore even laughed at the people that were speaking. Disrespect, and approved it.
Okay.
And we're asking for help.
Okay.
We're asking for help. And I appreciate you reminding us that we have that meeting, but that being said, those meetings, they don't do anything for us. They've already made their choice. And so our voices aren't loud enough. We come to you pleading for your help in this situation. Maybe our voices will be heard if you stand behind us on this issue.
And I really appreciate you coming out. Thank you. Next person is Delbert Stallsworth. Good evening, sir. Need your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Delbert Stallsworth. I live at 8130 Brighton Road. I've lived in that neighborhood my entire life, and that's the past 50 years. My dad lives on the corner at 8110, and I bought the house 2 doors north, so I didn't move very far. My concern, as the previous gentleman, is the same thing, and I appreciate, Mayor Natal, that you invited us to air our concerns before the council, and it's nice that at least somebody will listen to us. We're all concerned as to the safety, and the location that they've chosen is right behind the Wickiup trailer park. I know of at least one couple with 3 children that live there, and anybody that's familiar with the trailer park has always been full of kids. There's still lots of kids there. There's children all around the neighborhood. DuPont Elementary School's not that far away. We're concerned about the O'Brien Canal, which is right next to the property, which is used to irrigate farmland. And I'm sure there's cattle and horses and other livestock that draw their water from that canal. It travels on out to Bar Lake and feeds into Bar Lake, and then Bar Lake feeds on out further. So any contamination that might get spilled, and chances are will get spilled, could very well fall into that canal and get carried downstream, and who knows how far that contamination will go or what type of contamination will end up in there. And even under the safest circumstances, we all know after the disaster in Japan, the disaster in Joplin, Missouri, Mother Nature can't be controlled. And should the unthinkable happen and a tornado hit this area, there would be medical waste strung who knows how far. I heard there was debris from Joplin that was strung as far as 75 miles away. I think it's poor planning to put such a facility that close to a water supply, that close to homes with children and pets. It's 2 blocks from the Mile High Flea Market. There's always thousands of people there every weekend. There's water supplies on the opposite side of the highway, not that far away, that I'm sure Commerce City, Thornton, other places draw their water from. There are just so many concerns about this, and we're also concerned about our property values. Property values have taken an awful hit with this economy, and would a facility like this also further damage our property values if we decided to move? Could we sell our property?
Okay. Thank you for coming in, sir.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Next person is David Stallsworth. Evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm David Stallsworth, 8110 Brighton Road, DuPont, 6 blocks from where they want to build this infectious waste unit. They're supposed to run all this through an autoclave unit, which should take care of most of the problems with what they're running through it. But also, when this water, when they drain the autoclave, that goes into your sewer system, goes to South Adams County's sewer plant, and unless this is taken care of properly, you may be drinking some of that water after a while. Also, when they spill something on the floor, they're going to wash this down. That goes down the drain. That goes to your Adams County sewer plant. I'd like to echo everything that Jacob said and Delbert said, and put me right in with what they're saying. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Marino, did you have a comment not directed towards, okay.
Just
ahead,
a general comment. For both Mr. Stallsworth and Mr. Burrow, I think their comments to this council come at an extremely timely period, considering that we do have this on the agenda to be discussed later on. I appreciate that the mayor and Councilman Diaz both went to that meeting, and I think it's unfortunate that the company in question decided not to come. But I look forward to having a proper review and discussion about this item later in the agenda, and I appreciate you coming to share your opinion with us.
Okay, the next person on the list, and please, I apologize, but I'm not quite sure. The last name looks like Leon. Am I close? Okay, but the first name I'm having some problems with. I'm sorry? Rocco. Oh, Rocco. Okay. I'm sorry. I should have been able to see that. I'll need your name and address for the record, sir.
Okay, Rocco Leon. I'm from 8555 Brighton Road. directly across from where this facility is going to be put in. And I've already put up with Ferrari and Sons ash waste that they had put in there. In fact, I had to call the supervisor out one time. They didn't really believe me what was going on. They had to actually come down and hose down wash all my windows and the whole house. It was all full of ash, the black ash. And they did that about 2 or 3 times. And I live directly across this, and we're still putting up with this. And I sure as heck don't want this to go in. In fact, I have a granddaughter that had asthma, and she quit coming because she was having, that ash from the Fiories. She was having problems with that, and I just don't want to see this going in. I agree with the other people that's been up here, gentlemen, and appreciate your help. See if we can get some stop to this, because I'm going to be the one directly across from this, and I've already had enough with Fiories.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The last person on the list, and I'm going to apologize again. Is it Thomai, maybe? What is it? I am having such trouble today with just handwriting. And how was your last name pronounced, sir? Doubt. Okay. And I apologize. Once you tell me what it is, I can see it. But
yeah, I do scribble.
Yeah. Good
I
evening.
get nervous.
I'll need your name and address for the
It's
record,
Thomas
sir.
Doubt, D-O-U-T. I live at 8621 Brighton Road. It's catty corner, just a little bit north of it. And this has been an unfighting battle. I've been going to every meeting and everything since November of 08. The first one before he even bought it, to see if they could actually dump the ash in there. And you make a complaint and nothing was said. The county was never out there checking it. They were supposed to mix it 70-30 and then disc it in, and I could get up every morning on my bed and look out and the disc was sitting there. I could see over the 6-foot fence. And we do not need a facility like this in the neighborhood. At this location, I feel it should be put out where there's nothing. Put it out by the dump, where you're going to have the stink anyway. This neighborhood's been come back. It's a lot cleaner now than it's ever been. I grew up there. I moved out there in '56, and my folks lived there. I moved away for a short term, and I bought my folks' house on the estate, from the state, and I shouldn't have. Come to find out, but I'm probably second or third in line of the sewer system that comes out of there. And the sewer system's been in there since the late 50s, I believe. So it's got to be pushed pretty good with that Mountain View Estates going in, and several houses been built along there too. And there's supposed to be, I think, 7 businesses in this on the North Fury Kramer industrial area. And who tells how much could go on the south side when they get done. And like Rocco was saying, everything in Diablo, I didn't remember his name, the stuff that's went on. And they just, you go to the meetings, and I've been to, I think, all the meetings, and I got 2 no's off of the commissioners out of all of the times I've been there. It's just like it's cut and dried before we even go. And then just last month, they waived putting a sidewalk, him having to put a sidewalk in, along his whole distance of property, which is, a quarter mile or better. But, we eventually, this is going to be in you guys' hands. You know that. It's just a matter of time. Because it will be annexed to Commerce City because we're surrounded. There's no way getting out of it. So you guys, we appreciate your help on this and try to keep it away. But, it's just not that, all facilities like that have a spill. It's just a matter of when, how bad, and how many get reported. It's just unreal. And then, like they said, it goes down a sewer line in St. Adams County, and it goes into the sewer there and treated. Then downstream, that's drinking water. And then there is an awful lot of gravel pits there, ex-gravel pits that are treat water system for Thornton.
Okay. I want to thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay. And council will make comments as far as this when we get to the study session, because I know I've got a few. Mr. Marino, did I just forget to take your name off, or did you have another comment? Okay. Thank you. Okay, next item is approval of minutes, and there's two sets of minutes before council this evening for approval. The first set of the minutes of the meeting of April 18th, 2011. But before voting on the minutes of April 18th, I need a motion to allow myself to abstain from voting because of my excused absence, and Councilman Diaz because he was not yet a seated member of council. Motion, Ms. Snyder?
Yes, move to allow the abstention of the mayor and Councilman Diaz.
Mr. McEldowney?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to allow myself and Councilman Diaz to abstain from voting on the minutes of April 18th. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Now I take a motion to pass those minutes. Ms. Teeter?
Yes, move approval of regular meeting minutes of April 18th, 2011.
Ms. Snyder?
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of April 18th. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. The second set of minutes before council this evening are the minutes of the meeting of April 25th. Before voting on the minutes of April 25th, I need a motion to allow Councilman McEldowney, Councilman Carson to abstain from voting because of their excused absences, and Councilman Diaz because he was not a seated member of council until the meeting of June 13th. Mr. Marino?
Move to allow council members Diaz, McEldowney, and Carson to abstain.
Ms. Snyder?
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to allow Councilman McEldowney, Councilman Carson, and Councilman Diaz to be excused from voting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Ms. Snyder?
Yes, move approval of the meeting minutes, April 25th, 2011.
Mr. Marino?
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes April 25th, 2011. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, request a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. Both sets of minutes are approved. There's just one resolution on the agenda tonight that requires a separate voice vote. It's Resolution 2011-40, resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between Adams County and the City of Commerce City for November 1st, 2011, coordinated general election. Now I ask City Manager Flannery to invite staff to come forward and discuss this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. City Clerk Laura Bauer will be addressing this item.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. We had a charter amendment in 2007 that allows us to hold our coordinated elections, or hold our municipal elections in coordination with Adams County. This year is a municipal election for us. So in order to solidify the agreement with Adams County, before you tonight is an intergovernmental agreement for your approval. I'm open to any questions.
Okay. Questions, Mr. Marino?
Ms. Bauer, just a couple of questions. I noticed in the intergovernmental agreement that the cost to the city is $2 per active registered voter.
That's correct.
Is that, I was just curious, is that consistent throughout other counties, the price for that, or is that, have you seen any of that data on what other counties charge municipalities to put something to a ballot?
I have to say that I'm not familiar with the cost. I can certainly find that out for you. I could ask around, but I am not familiar with what other counties charge. And that cost, it does not include any Tabor notices. If we place a Tabor question on the ballot, that cost will go up because we have to account for the county mailing that goes out, not the blue book. You get two books. You get a blue book for the state issues. You get it's usually a county book for any county Tabor issues. So that would go up. I will say that cost has been pretty consistent across the board, except for when we participated in the presidential election. That was a pretty crippling cost to Commerce City. That cost was $58,000. But generally, our election costs run about what we have budgeted, and that is approximately $17,000.
Thank you. And under the county's definition, how is an active voter defined? I know that if you skip a certain number of elections, you're then considered inactive. Do you know how they judge that?
Actually, if you do not vote in a couple of elections, then you actually could be purged off of the voter lists. The last election, the last coordinated mail ballot election, and I'm not sure if that applies this year as well. But prior to the election, the county clerk will send out a notice to all those that she has on the active rolls. And if she gets return mail, they go to an active moved, I think it is, status. That changed last year, but I'm not sure, to be honest with you, if we're back to that. But generally, an active registered voter is someone who has voted in the past. A lot of times, if you move, people do not report from county to county that they have moved. However, some of that's changed a little bit because we now have what's called the SCORE system statewide. So all the county clerks feed into the same database. But I will tell you that I think our last record, we have approximately 20,000 registered voters in Commerce City.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Benson?
Yes, thank you. Just out of curiosity, if we'd had this election back in April, how much would it have cost?
If you will hold on a second. Let me see if I can switch this over.
You can just get back to me.
I don't believe I can. Well, I can tell you. In November of 2009, as you know, that was our first coordinated election for our municipal elections. We had approximately an 18% voter turnout, and our cost was $12,237.13. In November in 2008, we had a special election, and that, of course, was the presidential election. We had an 84% voter turnout. That was a $58,000 election. In November of 2007, we actually had two elections in 2007, one in April and one in November, and I don't have the April cost, but I can find that out for you. November was $16,000. In April of 2005, we had our own election that was $9,000, and then in November 2006, $10,000. So we're running about the same. Cost. Actually, it would probably be a little bit more, and I'll say that because when we had our election in April, our last municipal election that we held there in April, we had to hire 33 judges for 13 polling locations. We pay them, I believe it's like $50 or $100, whatever the top dollar amount is that we could pay judges. So we had to secure polling places. We had to pay for ballots. We had to rent equipment. And hire judges. So actually, it's a little bit cheaper running it coordinated.
Thank you.
If there's any further discussion, I'll entertain a motion at this time. Ms. Snyder?
Yes, move to approve Resolution 2011-40.
Ms. Teeter?
Second the motion.
The motion is second to approve Resolution 2011-40. City Attorney, please read the title.
Resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between Adams County and the City of Commerce City for the November 1, 2011 coordinated general election.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. City Attorney's read the title. Have a voice vote, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion passes. Thank you very much. There's only one ordinance for first reading on the agenda tonight. It's the ordinance 1867, an ordinance renaming the United Power Incorporated franchise, renewing and extending the United Power Incorporated franchise and fixing the terms and conditions therefore. Now ask City Manager Jerry Flannery, invite staff to come forward to introduce ordinance 1867.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'd like to bring Mr. Aker up to introduce our honored guests.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. This is, I guess, the final chapter for the next 20 years with our franchise negotiations with United Power. If you recall, back on May 9th, we came forward with a request to extend our existing franchise agreement. We've continued to work with United Power very cooperatively and have come up with a revised extension to our existing franchise agreement with United Power. Really, largely what this one does is cleans up some of the language, brings it up to today's standards since this existing contract or franchise agreement language was about 20 years old. The agreement continues for the next 20 years. We've had a very good working relationship with United Power, and there's really not any substantive changes that have been made. It's just mainly cleanup of some of the language. With that, I could answer any questions. Also, Rich Gonzalez and Ron Atchie with the United Power here and would also like to address City Council.
Okay. Do you have questions for Mr. Aker? No. Seeing none, if you'd like to introduce our guest.
Great. And one last item, you'll notice we put a new revised ordinance on your dais tonight. In looking at this, we wanted to make sure we were clear on what the effective date was, so we added that to the language. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's nice to see you both.
Good evening. My name's Rich Gonzalez. I'm your district representative from Brighton. Our address is 500 Cooperative Way. Good evening, Mayor, Nattel, Council, staff. I'm here tonight to introduce to you our new CEO for United Power, Mr. Ron Atchie.
Okay. Welcome, sir.
Mr. Mayor, member of the City Council, it's my pleasure to be here this evening with you. I think I've had the opportunity to meet most of you in the past month or two. As you probably are obviously aware, I'm relatively new to United Power, having been here about 5 months. During that time, I've learned how important the relationship that United Power has with Commerce City. That's very important to us. We're very pleased to be able to work with Mr. Flannery and Mr. Aker and the city's legal counsel on a contract extension of our franchise agreement. I personally want to thank the staff for their cooperation in that effort. And again, we look forward as United Power to another 20 years of relationship that's very, very important to us, and appreciate all of the support that we have gotten from your community. And we look to continue to reciprocate that in the future. So again, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the City Council and the staff for all your help and support.
Okay, nice to meet you. Ms. Smith. Mr. Marino, did you have a comment or general comment, sir?
Thank you for coming and being with us tonight. Having read through the franchise agreement, I was actually pretty struck by United Power's commitment to environmental sustainability. That's always been something that's very important to Commerce City, and I appreciate that we have a partner in that endeavor. So thank you.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for coming. Oh, Ms. Teeter, I'm sorry.
I have a comment to both you two. It's been very enjoyable working with you, Rich, and everybody in United Power. And I want to welcome you and thank you for hosting a room at CML. Thank you.
Just appreciate that. I enjoyed that personally very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to say something to council or ask a question? Seeing none, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now entertain a motion to introduce ordinance 1867 by council of seat and approve the ordinance on first reading. Mr. McEldowney.
Move to approve ordinance 1867 on first reading.
Ms. Snyder. I have a motion and a second to approve Ordinance 1867. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the city attorney please read the title?
An ordinance renaming the United Power Incorporated franchise, renewing and extending the United Power Incorporated franchise, and fixing the terms and conditions therefore.
Okay, I've had a motion and a second. City attorney has read the title. Request a roll call vote, please. Okay, the vote is 9 yeses. Ordinance is approved on first reading. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Economic Development Division recap presentation of the 2011 International Council of Shopping Centers Global Retail Real Estate Convention. Mr. Flannery, who will be presenting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Probably not a surprise.
No.
Brittany Morris, Economic Development Director for the city.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Brittany Morris, Director of Economic Development. And tonight, I will give a brief recap of this year's International Council of Shopping Centers RECon recap. And I do have a PowerPoint, Laura. Thank you. Make sure this works. All right, and I just want to quickly thank the City Council and thank our residents for sending 6 of us this year to the ICSC conference in Las Vegas. We had a very successful trip this year, as you will see. And there are 2 handouts in front of you. One is a copy of our schedule, and the second is a copy of this year's retail brochure that we handed out to various retailers and developers we met with. This year's trip was May 21st through the 25th in Las Vegas, as it is always held in Las Vegas. Team of 6, we had Mayor Pro Tem Tracy Snyder, Councilmember McEldowney, Jerry Flannery, Tom Aker, myself, and Michelle Hill, Economic Development Specialist, who typically attends the ICSC RECon national retailers, and actually it's not listed here, but international retailers, commercial real estate brokers, retail and other commercial developers, government officials like ourselves, and vendors. Attendance this year was at 30,000, and this actually was down from 2010 and only 55% of the 2008 record attendance. This, of course, is indicative of the economy and its hit on the retail industry. But what we would like to say is that low attendance is not a bad thing for Commerce City. The people who wanted to be there were there, and they were there to talk about deals and future deals, and we had longer one-on-one quality meetings, and it was easier actually to get from meeting to meeting. It can get to be quite challenging when there are 60,000 people in the convention center, so it made it a little bit easier there. 2011 ICSC schedule, we of course did the pre-convention scheduling and preparation thanks to Michelle Hill in our office. We also attended ICSC education and networking sessions before we left. 29 pre-scheduled meetings, and this is pretty incredible, and definitely need to give credit to Michelle Hill for that. I know plenty of cities in the metro area that go with 5 or 6 or 7 pre-scheduled meetings. We had 29 on the books, and that's amazing. Networking receptions, we attended a Hispanic retail reception, had some great conversations there, and there are some other receptions that were definitely worth our time listed on your schedule. We had a team wrap-up meeting in Vegas. This is very important because we are able to talk about what we learned, who we met with, since we split up as a team while it's still fresh in our minds, and write down our to-do list so we can start working the minute we get back. Public sector power session presentation. This is something new that I'll get into in a second. And 82 total retailer, developer, broker contacts. This is a record for Commerce City. This is a breakdown of the 3 years of ICSC trips with Brittany. 2009, 2010, and 2011. And as you can see, some of the information varies. We had 4 members of city team go with us, 2009 and 10, and then we had 6 in 2011, which I'll get to the advantages of that in a little bit. And this gives you just a sense of the general convention atmosphere, some of the highlights and pre-scheduled meetings, and then total meetings. And as you can see, we doubled from 2010 to 2011. Purpose of our meetings at ICSC, to strategize retail attraction with local developers and brokers. Many of our local owners and developers are actually located in other states, so this is a very cost-effective way for us to go to Vegas and be able to meet with those individuals who don't otherwise do business here that often. Retention visits with existing retailers, this is incredibly important. We want our retailers to feel appreciated and loved, and this is also a great way to get in front of them. Retail attraction meetings, again, our priority continues to be eating places and grocers, and then promote retail and commercial development opportunities. This year we were able to promote the Victory Crossing site, as well as dog track redevelopment, and then, of course, the King Soopers Marketplace on 104th and Chambers. ICSC marketing materials. We had a new Redefining Commerce brochure for retail, hospitality, and leisure. This is the Redefining Commerce campaign we briefed you about a few months ago, and each of our target industries we have a different brochure for. This one is for retail, hospitality, and leisure. It is a brief description and pictures of the city, demographic information for retail trade areas. We have 2 very distinct retail trade areas in the city, as you know, both in the south and the north, providing information for both. Map of retail trade areas and development opportunities. We also carried with us flash drives in case the retailer or developer we met with wasn't able to carry the 4 billion things they get during the conference, and maps and other demographic information. We also carry traffic counts for each of the major intersections in case that is discussed during our meetings. And then golf invitations. We invite the retailers and brokers and developers who we meet with to join us for a round of golf at our Buffalo Run golf course, which is a great opportunity to get back in front of them when we come home. Public sector power session. This is the first time we participated in this, and it was actually the first time ICSC provided this opportunity. It was a 20-minute live presentation. I presented information as well as Councilmember Snyder and Councilmember McEldowney. We included the city name and logo listed in at-door program, listed in on-site schedules. We gave a PowerPoint and a community profile handout. We also received exposure on the ICSC website. Why was this so special? Nearly 450 public sector entities were represented at the convention. 15 of those were from Colorado, and a majority of them in the metro area. 36 were selected for power sessions. Commerce City was the only one from Colorado. So that was pretty special and a great opportunity for us to speak about those opportunities, our retail opportunities in Commerce City. And we also received some great compliments from the ICSC staff, so I want to thank Michelle for that as well. ICSC meeting content. We had very positive discussions. Average was 30 minutes per meeting. We have a very jam-packed schedule, as you can see. 30 minutes is what we get. Get in, get out, get your message across. Each of us played our own part. Since we did have 6, we would always have an elected official, a member of the city management, and a member from my staff present at each of these meetings, and that made it very effective to have each of those different players play their part. Great response to our marketing materials. We had something similar the year before, and as you will see, it opens up into a map, which makes it a very easy talking piece. So we kept that for this year's marketing materials and received some great responses. Lessons learned. Retail industry economic outlook is improving. Retailers are planning for the future. While we found 2 years ago people were talking 2 years, 3 years out about potential deals, we found that this year they were actually talking about in a more immediate future, so that was very positive. Market data is a must. We were, last year we purchased ESRI, which has helped us look at our market demand, our market analysis, and also our psychographics, which is basically where our residents spend money and what they spend money on. ICSC pre-planning and scheduling absolutely paid off with 80 meetings total. that is wonderful. Power Session was a valuable tool for promoting city, and the exhibitor booth, which we have never had, but it's absolutely not necessary. We are able to ebb and flow and meet with a lot more people than if we were stagnant at a booth. Lessons learned continued. Retention visits are very important, getting in front of our existing retailers and making sure they're happy. Retailers are taking notice of Commerce City. I think by sheer virtue of being able to talk about the King Soopers Marketplace, they were talking about us and taking notice. Stay for the entire conference. It provided that opportunity to meet with 80 retailers, developers, brokers, and know them before you need them. My favorite saying, get in front of these people because it takes a long time to get retail deals done. So you need to be able to know them and build those relationships, and ICSC absolutely presents that opportunity. Next steps, our thank you letters have been mailed. Thanks to Michelle, those get mailed immediately when we return home. Follow-up meetings and discussions, I will introduce our retail specialist, but this is going to provide another opportunity to get in front of developers and retailers, is to introduce them to Julie. Meet with retailers and brokers we did not meet with at ICSC. Unfortunately, not everyone can meet with us because of their jam-packed schedule in Vegas, so we're able to get in front of them at home. Participate in local ICSC meetings and summer retail conference. That conference is coming up at the end of the month, and it will be held in Denver this year. Usually it's held in Colorado Springs or up in the mountains. This year it's in Denver, which is very convenient. And that will be at the end of the month. And prepare for ICSC RECon 2012. We can't start planning early enough, so that's happening now. And I want to thank our team. Here's a picture of us outside of ICSC, and thank them for all of their help. And with that, I do want to take a quick moment and thank Michelle Hill. As you know, Michelle is stepping down from her retail duties and taking over the Business Retention Expansion Program for the city. This was her 5th ICSC trip representing Commerce City, and she has done an amazing job. Almost all of the ideas that we've implemented have come from her. So I do want to just take a quick moment and maybe have a round of applause for all of her hard work. And I'm happy to introduce Julie Jacoby, who is our new retail specialist. Julie's diverse 20-year professional career spans a variety of industries, including broadcasting, gaming, hospitality, retail, education, and manufacturing. She grew up working in a family-owned retail business. Her professional career began in broadcasting as a news reporter, then moved into management for a new radio station in northern Illinois. Managed public relations for a prominent Las Vegas Strip casino, assisting in the openings and groundbreakings of 3 other well-known casinos along the Strip. She has 4 years developing marketing and retention programs for private area schools. Most notably, she spent 8 years at General Growth Properties, one of the country's largest retail developers. She served as the director of corporate marketing and communications for over 230 shopping malls around the country. She worked on over 30 shopping mall development projects, and she managed the company's ICSC convention show in Las Vegas. She has received multiple public relations and marketing awards, and she is married to a Colorado native, has 2 daughters, and has lived in the area for 10 years. So I'll introduce Julie. And Julie will be heading up our trip for next year. With that, I will answer any questions that you have.
Okay,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Teeter?
Yes, thank you, Brittany. I have a comment. Me being in attendance at ICSC 3 years ago, I know how important it is to be meeting one-on-one with these potential retailers. And also, I noticed that you will be inviting some of them to play golf, and I would very much enjoy playing golf with one of them. Thank you very much.
I will let them know. Thank you.
Mr. McEldowney?
I just wanted to add an extra thank you and word of appreciation to Ms. Hill. Having attended twice now, I can't thank you enough for the level of effort and pre-work that obviously goes into these endeavors each year. I think a lot of the work of our staff in general goes sort of unseen, and for us to be able to show up and have things so well aligned, whether it's hotel reservations or dinner or just the meetings themselves, for the folks that don't get the handout, Michelle assembles over a period of weeks and months before we arrive, essentially a calendar, a schedule that plots out half hour by half hour who we're meeting with, where we're meeting, who's going to which meeting, and it allows us to simply execute. So for those of us that are there to support the effort, it makes it very doable. And it also puts us in a position to be able to respond and react as those opportunities show up for the other meetings or to go out and canvass the floor. So the comments that we received consistently, whether it was from ICSC staff or the development community, the brokerage community, they have developed a really strong appreciation for Michelle and for our city through her work. And I think it's, we have to take pause and just really, I think, reflect on and acknowledge your efforts in that vein. So thank you very, very much.
Mr. Marino?
Brittany, thanks for your presentation. I did have a question. Having attended ICSC last year and realizing how important these meetings are, one of the items of discussion at last year's ICSC was that we had a meeting with the McDonald's developer in our city on Parkway Drive, and he was interested at the time in a possible remodel. Is he still interested in doing that?
Yes, we talked about that in detail in Vegas. It is getting a lot closer.
Great. Thank you.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes. Hi, Brittany. Thank you for your presentation. And I wanted to echo a lot of what Councilman McEldowney said, and also to give Michelle a huge thank you because you did such a great job, and everyone on the team did. And so I wanted to say thank you, that I appreciated the opportunity. This is also my second time, but I would have to say this one by far. The amount of meetings, the organization, having set a new record for the amount of meetings, it was, it was go, go, go from beginning to end, but it was really a great trip. I felt it was very successful, and I just wanted to say thank you to Michelle, to yourself, and to the staff, and to the citizens for allowing us to go out there and do what we do. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Diaz?
First and foremost, I want to applaud the team that went to Vegas. I mean, honestly, looking at this looks really intense. And so it's pretty impressive that you guys were able to keep track of this stuff, and especially the economic development team. I think what citizens want to see is they actually want to see buildings, but it's nice for them to really see the progress that we are making. And so seeing a presentation like this, I think, is really encouraging to people who live in Commerce City. And more than anything, I think it's just really cool to see Commerce City in the spotlight. I mean, only one in Colorado to do a power session. So a lot of props to you guys, so I appreciate that.
Mr. McEldowney?
One comment I failed to make, and it'll sort of tie into Mr. Diaz's comments. I think there is that expectation by some that we come home with deals signed, and it's really not the function of ICSC. I think, as Ms. Morris stated, it really is about the relationship building. And I think the comment made in the presentation about the meeting with existing retailers and existing businesses, those were some of our most valuable discussions in my sort of reflection on the meeting, where we were able to understand how past decisions have affected their business, how changes in their local area are affecting their business performance, what's the economy doing to them. Got some great insights from the folks that have the King Soopers property in the historic city, and what's working and what's not, and really how what some of the opportunities were there. And just the ability to have, again, those discussions with folks one-on-one, where these are folks that aren't local and those opportunities don't present themselves regularly. It was a mutually beneficial exchange, and oftentimes ended with their very genuine appreciation for us taking that extra time to really chase down issues, solve problems for them, and again, reinforce how much they liked working with the city. And I think that was, I obviously touched on Ms. Hill's support, but the compliments that we got relative to planning and development, and how easy we were to work with, and the comparisons to unnamed cities that weren't as easy to work with, I think were also great nuggets to bring back and help council understand the sentiments that our partners out there had. So great for us to hear that, and that unsolicited feedback. So thank you again, guys.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Benson? Excuse me, sir.
Thank you.
Listen.
Okay. No, you need to talk louder, I think. I want to express my appreciation to you, Brittany, and our entire team, especially Michelle. And I know that there are some things that might be a little more specific about what we accomplished, and I'm sure you can't really talk about those in a public meeting, but I wonder if it would be possible for us to have an executive session where we could be briefed on those things that you believe. And I know you've said we have a letter of intent from Come and Go with regard to the Turnberry Marketplace. I'd like to hear about any other things that we might be getting close to. And I know you can't do that in public because there's still negotiations going on. So I wonder if would it be possible, I'll ask the council, would it be possible for us to schedule an executive session where we can get into that sort of a discussion or presentation?
To you, Ms.
I'd leave it to the pleasure of the council.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just
Yes.
to pipe in just a
Please.
quick bit. Under the, and I know Mr. Benson knows this as well, under the open meetings laws, there's very limited grounds for having an executive session. And so unless there's current negotiations going on that you're directing and those kinds of things, it would be hard to structure it.
Thank you. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
It's a slippery slope that we always walk on in economic development.
I understand. I just think that there's probably more information out there, and I'm wondering when that can be shared with the council. And I think that we can have maybe a series of executive sessions when negotiations start on any particular matter so that we could be fully informed on exactly what is happening, because I don't think that the council should be kept in the dark about those things, and the public shouldn't be kept in the dark about things that are public either. So I'd just like to, I don't know, maybe the council doesn't care about getting informed on those things. I don't know. I'd like to be informed as it happens.
Mr. Flannery and Ms.
Stevens.
I'm trying to think of whether I want to go to Ms. Morris or Ms. Stevens. Maybe all three of you. If the three of you will make the decision when and what needs to be presented to council at what appropriate time, I think that would be in the best interest of everyone. That's why we have placed you people in the positions of authority that you're in. There have been examples of information passed at some of our closed meetings that got out way too soon for whatever reason and by whatever person. I myself would feel much more comfortable if the three of you would make that decision and not feel that this council is forcing you to present information when the time is not appropriate. Thank you very much.
Well, let me just say that I have never suggested that anything be done at an inappropriate time. And I certainly agree that our staff is capable of making those decisions. And I'd just like to be kept up to date on what's going on. And if it's confidential, it'll be kept confidential.
Thank you, and I wanted to thank
Sure.
our team just one last time for all of their hard work, including Jerry and Tom, who also joined us. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is discussion of the short and long-range ballot measure alternatives. I now ask City Manager Jerry Flannery to introduce staff to come forward and begin the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For this presentation, I'd like to introduce Ms. Rem Cordero, Intergovernmental Relations Manager.
Evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. So at the last meeting, we provided council with a presentation on what were the possible items that and strategies that and what would be their appropriate timing in terms of when to put them on the ballot based on the discussions during the long-term financial plan. So just to give you a quick recap, the long-range financial plan, there was pass-through revenues estimated at $3.5 million, a list of capital needs over $1 billion, and then at the June 13th meeting, you asked us to come back to you and give you some specific ideas for you to then provide us with direction on how to go in terms of this year's ballot and also in the long term. just to begin the discussion, I know that during the comments the evening of the 13th, many of you expressed concerns about what could be in this year's ballot that's not from Commerce City, but that would be on the ballot that our citizens would see, and also what would be on the ballot for 2012. And so I made a very short list of what we think should be coming up. There will be a statewide tax increase to raise funding for education, which is being put on the ballot by a coalition that was put together by Senator Rowley Heath. There's a possible RTD bond measure for next year. District Attorney Dunquick, his term limit increase question may be in this year's ballot. Also, there may be a 27J mill levy increase. And then for 2012, there's already 10 different questions that have been filed but haven't moved through that process for next year. Just wanted to give you that information so you have it present in your minds while we move through this presentation tonight. So I thought I would change it up a little bit, and instead of starting short term, we'll start with the big picture. And forgive my attempt at humor there. But so we'll start with the larger items first, down the line, 2012 and beyond. The first thing that we would like for you to know, that we know, is that it's important that there is clear and consistent strategy throughout the process we're recommending. And I'm going to jump really quick to a slide that I had in my presentation on June 13 that addressed specifically the clear strategy. And so the broad strategic perspective is we want this initiative to address Commerce City's future infrastructure and economic development, public safety, and also cultural challenges. We want to establish a quality community initiative. We want to create a community engagement and ownership of this project and this initiative. And we want to prevent a rubber stamp scenario, both by this council and by the citizens. And lastly, we want to prepare a foundation out in the community that will eventually take this campaign and lead it and make sure that everyone is informed and make sure that it really has an opportunity to pass. And lastly, the whole purpose of this is to build a secure and quality community for a lifetime, and keeping in mind that no one votes against their own idea. So going back to my earlier slide, what we're recommending is that for these long-term, larger issues, that council give staff direction to establish a quality community initiative stakeholder committee, and for short, QCISC. And so this is how we view this committee. It will be, the members will be nominated by City Council, and also there will be recommendations from the City Manager's Office. But the final appointment of each member would come from the City Council. The membership would have to be diverse. We need stakeholders from every group. We need business people, community leaders, citizens, everyone. The QC-ICS would be staff-led. I would be working closely with that group and also would try to guide them, but they would be self-motivated based on the feedback that they get from other constituents and other stakeholders in the community. And I have another slide that I'm going to jump to really quick so that you can see what that process looks like, more or less. And so in the beginning phase, the appointments and the actual appointment of the committee happens through City Council, by City Council, and then we would see that committee subdivide into infrastructure subcommittee for public works and parks and recreation, economic development, cultural development, public safety, and those subcommittees would do the bulk of the work in terms of learning what is the appetite in our community and what can be done. And when they've formulated an idea then they will bring that back to the larger committee, which in turn would bring it back to City Council in the form of a request. And if Council approves that request, then Council would submit it to the ballot. In terms of a timeline, with your direction, we would begin the appointment process. We would like to have an appointment process by September 5th of this year, and have the ICSC, sorry about that, would begin meeting in September through July 2012, and more if necessary. And they will provide regular reports to City Council at minimum in a quarterly basis. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Mr. Moreno?
Just thank you, Ms. For my first recommendation, maybe an easier acronym.
I try.
But in all seriousness, in the establishment of this committee, would the process be open to, for example, a council member sitting on one of the committees as well? And I say that because I understand that council would be kept informed the entire way, but I also think it's important for those citizens to understand where council is coming from and why we are looking at these ballot initiatives, because of the severe lack of funding that we have in order to complete Parks and Rec and Public Works projects and everything that we need to do. I think having a council member on one of those committees would be a valuable voice in terms of putting things into perspective for the citizens that are involved.
I agree. I don't think we've drilled down that far into, who should or should not be there. I do think, and looking back to my notes when I learned a little bit more about the Better Denver initiative, I can't recall if there were council members as part of the committees. There is I guess you have to be sensitive to the overall strategy, which is this has to be very grassroots, and it has to feel like it's coming from the community. However, in terms of presenting to the group the perspective of City Council, I think that's crucial and very important and necessary, and also to keep in touch and perhaps even to lobby some important interests of each of the members of council. That relationship has to be there. So I'm sort of in the middle there.
Okay. Mr. McEldowney?
Thank you, Mr. Cordero. Appreciate the update. On one hand, I'm absolutely on board with Mr. Moreno, and I think we've talked in the past about establishing committees that are focused on these different areas for more of an ongoing, in-depth, whether it's policy or other analysis function. And I think in that vein, I would absolutely think that that's a council participation role. But I think in this regard, I would lean toward Mr. Cordero's comments, which are really the idea is to put this in the hands of the community and let them champion this with some guidance and support from staff so that they can really root through the matter, and it does truly become a citizen-led, citizen-sponsored idea. I think a kickoff discussion where council could convey the thinking of council as it's been shaped over time and why we've sort of given things the priority that we've given them in our discussions, and based on our, the citizen survey, what have you, makes total sense to sort of kickstart that. But to really let this be organic, I think it does have to be the citizens, on their own, and then, ultimately it's up to us to put the final shape on that and character on that before it goes to the ballot, should that be where it goes. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. I think it's one more great mechanism to help get folks either more engaged that are engaged today, or bring new folks into the discussion through these committees. So Thank you for your efforts so far. Thanks.
Mr. Bullock?
I agree and disagree. In the sense of the Better Denver initiative, not only was city staff, but the council had their own staff on that Better Denver initiative to project their thoughts and everything on how it was moving, in which direction it was. And so I tend to agree with Mr. Marino that I really do believe that at some level, someone of council should be on this, even if it's grassroots, because there is a bigger picture that a lot of people that don't come to every meeting and don't see every presentation and don't understand that when you say $1 billion, a lot of people don't understand that $1 billion on projects in this city over the next 10 years and putting them in an order that is going to make sense to council. I think that there should be somebody from council on this project that even if they just sit back and they are only a quiet guide, they're there in case it starts moving in a direction that by the time it gets back to us for a quarterly meeting is completely someplace that we aren't going. I understand Mr. McAdowney's the organic sense of it, but I really would love to see someone from council so our voice is silently heard there, at some point or in time.
Ms. Teeter?
Yes, thank you, Ms., for your presentation. I do agree with Mr. Marino and Mr. Bullock. I also understand Mr. McAdowney's point. The grassroots way is, I believe, the way to go for the citizens and businesses on this committee. However, there may be questions that they may want to ask, and with even one person on council not running or chairing this committee, they would have some answers, and like the importance of infrastructure, economic development along the DIA area, and just different questions like that. So I think it would be important to at least have one council member. Thank you.
Ms. Carson?
Thank you, Ms., for all your work, and I 100% agree that citizens need to be involved 100% all the way. Unlike my fellow council members, I'm not so sure that we really do need to be on those as an active council member. Sometimes I think we can push our opinion a little further than maybe the everyday citizen would appreciate. And it does come with a little bit that you're just not, I guess, maybe people don't feel that you're just the same as them and maybe will not speak up or be as active or whatever. And I do trust our citizens, and I trust the staff here as far as being able to provide all the information. I know better than I could about all the questions that they would need answered. But yes, I do appreciate that you're bringing forward that citizens need to be 100% involved in this, because they will be the ones that ultimately will approve or disapprove of whatever it is that we do. And they will be the ones that will receive whatever it is that we are trying to achieve. So, but thank you. And like I said, I am just not 100% convinced that council needs to be on that.
Mr. Marino?
Perhaps it's somewhat ironic that shortly here I'll be advocating for council members to be removed as voting members of boards and commissions.
2 more slides.
Yeah. But I didn't mean to open up the floodgates on this issue. I think staff is fully capable of determining whether or not and making a proposal to council on the appropriate level of involvement from city council. So I appreciate your work on this and look forward to it sounds like this is something that the council wants to look into, though, and I think that's the direction that you were looking for.
Mr. Mayor and council, I actually would echo what Councilman Marino mentioned. I think we've got a general feel for what the topic is, so we can look into it in more depth and look at other examples from around the region and talk to some of the local experts on the matter and bring that back in a formulated recommendation to you.
Okay. Mr. Bullock?
In my previous comments, I did not thank you for all the work that you've done, and I want everybody to be aware that this requires a lot of work, and it requires a lot of tightrope walking to make sure that everything that we're asking for comes back in the same way that we send it out. And thank you, Ms., for all the work that you've done on this. Thank you so much. And those floodgates that we're opening, I'm going to be objecting to whatever is about to come up, and Mr. Marino already knows that, so.
Mr. Diaz?
I do agree with all the points that are being made, and I was caught in the middle until the more I thought about it, this is a stakeholder committee. And so this really is a citizen group is what it feels like. And my understanding from your presentation, Mr. Cordero, is that you will actually work closely with the committee. And I assume that that will be with the subcommittee as well, right? And so through the reports and through you working with them, I feel like that our voices will technically be heard without having to have a city council member actually sit in on those committees.
Okay. Thank you. On to the next one.
Sure. So just to recap, what I'm hearing is that we have the direction to move forward with this process that we've proposed. And so by the beginning of September, we'll come back to you with a recommendation. And again, if at that time it does feel like it's most appropriate to have more of a city council presence in the committees, then that's perfectly fine too.
And we have not made that decision.
Right, but I mean,
Okay.
at that point.
Please. Again, this is the one I always push to staff, because one person or two people say it doesn't mean that's what the council
Yeah.
direction was till you get council direction.
We'll
Okay.
come back for.
And do you want to see each one of these done as they come up rather than all at the end? If that works for you, it's easier for me to get the direction after each one, rather than to wait to the end and get direction on 5 of them.
If you want to do this one now, that would be great.
That would be wonderful.
Sure.
Mr. Marino?
I just want to the mayor's direction. Just to provide clarification, I would like staff to look into this QC. I'm not even going to try. What you proposed, and it looks. I really think you have a great breakdown in terms of what we're looking at. The topics are extremely appropriate, I think, for them to look at some ballot measures regarding those subjects. And I just want to point out that, there were a couple of comments made at our last meeting that the process may not be moving fast enough, but I just can't. I can't overemphasize the gravity of what we're undertaking here. I mean, these are long-term solutions to very long-term problems. And as such, they deserve the appropriate study, they deserve the appropriate preparation. So I think that this is exactly the direction to go. So thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is there is a consensus to move forward. It would seem that the only question is whether the council is involved or not involved. And do you want to make that decision tonight, or do you want to see what they bring forward first?
What they bring forward, I would.
Okay, Ms. Teeter.
I am actually, as long as you, Ms., and different staff members, they'll be there for the questions for the committee and subcommittees. That would be fine with me. For you to give the answers and why certain things are important and locations and all.
Mr. McEldowney?
I would agree with Ms. Teeter. I think let's have staff come back with a more granular look at how this committee structure might work, how the reporting back to council might work, what that frequency would look like, et cetera. And then we can provide final input at that point. But I would think that we want staff to get moving on this.
Good. Mr. Bullock?
I want to echo what Mr. McAdowney just said on the timetable, because there's some of this that we might want to be looking at for this year's election, and that's the only thing that, what is staff's timetable?
We haven't gotten there. Councilman Bullock, the next part of this presentation is on this year.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from council is we have consensus to move forward, and then you will present something, at which time we will make some type of decision on what council's role will be in your particular committee.
Thank you. Okay.
Your next item.
So Councilman Moreno spoke about, there were a lot of comments at the last meeting on June 13th regarding taking some kind of action. Sometimes people do demand action from their leaders. Action has to be appropriate and proportionate. So we did give it a lot of thought and came back with a presentation for you. And so I'd like to bring up to the microphone Deputy City Manager Tom Aker.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. As Ms. Rhyme alluded to, there are a couple of ways that things can come before council and before the voters. Can either be through the citizens requesting something to be put on, and in this case also, staff has found some cleanup language that we would like to recommend be taken to a ballot this year. First, I believe in your package, and it's been discussed previously, the Planning Commission has recommended and requested that council consider putting ballot language on the ballot this year that would, in essence, remove council members as voting members of Planning Commission. There are two places in our current charter that name committees. One is with Planning Commission, the other is with Board of Adjustment. Staff at City Council's direction could add one or both of those to the ballot language. It could be one ballot, which could discuss both of them, which would change two sections within the current charter to make those all volunteer, citizen-driven committees. The second, back in 2007, when the voters passed a initiative which put our voting for City Council in November, there are a couple of items within the charter that weren't cleaned up at that same time relating to the timing on when council takes their seat after the election, and also when a vacancy, when does that term end as well. Staff is recommending that we bring both of those as one ballot language. We believe we can do it under one ballot language to change that effective date to be sometime in the future. It could be a few more days to follow state statute, or in some cases, some municipalities wait a month or several weeks. So with that, staff would seek direction on those two items as well.
Okay, Mr. Marino.
All right, Councilman Bullock, I'm ready for battle. Regarding Planning Commission, and I've thought about this quite a bit, is what bothers me is I would like to see us removed as voting members of boards and commissions that do not take independent action. Planning Commission merely forwards suggestions to City Council, and that's where I see the challenge is that as a planning commissioner, I decide a case, and then somehow legally I'm supposed to give that case a completely unbiased, unbiased reading, a consideration the second time. That just doesn't make logical common sense to me. And we are by far a minority on this one. No other municipality, well, I won't say no other. I think one other, perhaps Pueblo, does this. And I consider it a conflict of interest for council members, and I think it puts us at legal liability when these cases come before us.
Yeah. I think we should be out. Mr. Bullock?
Okay, Mr. Marino, I agree wholeheartedly with you on the Planning Commission. On the Board of Adjustment, I am going to put my line in the sand because I think that there should be council members on the Board of Adjustment simply for the purpose if it's a board, independent board that...
Go ahead.
Why is everybody looking at me?
Because you're speaking. We're trying to pay attention.
Oh. After speaking with you and checking back on it and looking and seeing what your argument was, the Planning Commission, I will agree with you. I was going to go down to one voting member, but I said that doesn't make much sense either. So why fight a losing battle?
Okay, and just to reconfirm what, if I heard Mr. Marino correctly, he agreed with you that it was just for the planning that he was trying to remove the council members, not the Board of Adjustment. Is that correct, sir?
If I can, Councilman Bullock, I thought this was going to be a lot more difficult. I absolutely agree with you, and that's why I did say that boards that are capable of independent action, Housing Authority, Liquor Authority, Board of Adjustment, those are boards that we should continue to be on, I feel, at present time. Planning Commission, which does not take independent action outside of this council, should not have voting members of council.
Okay. Mr. McEldowney?
Mr. Marino did a good job of summarizing my sentiment on the subject as well, and it's been an item that I know he and I have reflected on as we both joined the Planning Commission at the same time as council participants. We've had some matters that have come through the Planning Commission as of late that I think have served as great examples of items that put us in a real quandary when trying to balance sitting objectively on the Planning Commission and then sitting in a quasi-judicial capacity potentially as a sitting council member when and if that item should come through. And while it hasn't been an issue to date, I think it's a matter of time. And as growth starts to pick back up again and the complexities of the cases that come through Planning Commission continue to get more and more complicated, I think we just continue to expose ourselves unnecessarily. That said, I think there's another reason why it makes sense to remove us, and I would almost say remove us in full from the Planning Commission, and that's really, if we look around at whether it's county planning commissions or city planning commissions, the planning commissioner role, and I think Mr. McFarland, our chair, is a perfect example of someone who has devoted himself very, very wholly to the function, is an item that in and of itself can be a consuming role. The study of zoning and planning to the level that I've seen in planning commissioners that I've come across, whether it's through Dr. Cog functions or otherwise, is admirable. I mean, these people put a ton of time and energy into it. And one of the things that we're not afforded the luxury of as council members is doing that deep dive in every single subject area. We have to attain a certain level of mastery and knowledge across a wide range of subjects. We don't have the luxury of diving to that depth. And I think by having a planning commission that is a dedicated planning commissioner, a body of dedicated planning commissioners, it affords them the luxury of collectively training and learning to the depth and breadth that they need to or should be able to, and not have the conflict potentially that we would introduce to that role. So that said, I think it also serves as a phenomenal conduit to bring people into, whether it's council functions or otherwise. You look around the region, you look around the nation for that matter, and you talk to people who are serving as council members, and oftentimes the backstory is that, well, I served 10 years on the Planning Commission, I served 8 years on the Planning Commission, and these people have put an incredible amount of time and energy into really learning their community at that level. And so for them to move from that commissioner role into a council role makes great sense because they do bring such a rich background to that function. So just a handful of the reasons that I think cause me to say, in addition to the reasons that Mr. Moreno has already raised, that we should really look at simply removing the council function the council member participation in the Planning Commission.
Mr. Marino, I had you up again.
You won't find any argument from me, Councilman McEldowney. I do support simply removing council members from Planning Commission. That is fine with me. We can go about this two ways, and removing council members is one option, one route. The other is removing them as voting members. I do support Councilman McEldowney's feelings on this. Just at the last Planning Commission meeting, I was sitting on that side in the aisle, in the audience, because I wanted to give other planning commissioners the time, the experience that they need to be able to make informed decisions. And Commissioner McFarland, I remember, introduced me, and I said, "It's really nice to be on this side," and it was. And council still can get that in-depth knowledge that Councilman McEldowney is referencing by simply attending a Planning Commission meeting and seeing what goes on and seeing everything that goes into a case, reviewing the case. We can do that as well. Because removing us from that commission will not limit our ability to be able to get that experience and that knowledge. So I would support your proposal, Councilman McEldowney.
Ms. Teeter?
Yes, I'm going to be brief because I don't want to be redundant, but I echo the other feelings of the other council members. This board is only sending direction or recommendations. The other boards are deciding boards like the Liquor Authority, which I sit on, which I still find that to be crucial to have a council member. But I agree with the others. Thank you.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes, I would have to agree with everybody else that's spoken. Councilman McEldowney, one of the main reasons why I've steered clear of the Planning Commission for the last almost decade is because I haven't wanted to be in that situation. So I'm surprised it hasn't come up before now, honestly. So I would be for complete removal of council members from the Planning Commission. Mac McFarland, you guys you've done a great job, and your team has done a great job throughout the years, and I really want to let you know that I appreciate your service, and I feel that you all will do just fine. So, I mean, you've really done a great job, so thank you. And Kathy Teeter and I have, even on the Liquor Authority, taken times, there's been times over the years that we've sat out and allowed other Liquor Authority members to serve, just so that they'd have an opportunity to once in a while. And so I could see where that would also be something that I could see going on. So I think my point of view is that we just eliminate, we put language in for a vote to just eliminate the council members altogether. But I do think we should keep people on the BOA. Thanks.
Just as an aside, Mr. McFarland, he has been pushing this for as long as I've been on council, and I know we've brought it before council before, and we've been turned down. It sounds like we're going to go the other way now, which I'm really glad of. Mr. Benson?
Yes, I think Ms. Teeter pointed out the language of distinction that I was thinking about, and that is the difference between a recommending board and a deciding board. I think that council members should be removed as voting members of any recommending board. I have no problem with having council members remain on those boards ex officio, however.
Ms. Carson?
I also will make it brief, but I do believe that the language should read that total removal off of the Planning Commission. And thank you for all the work that all of you do on that.
Mr. Bullock?
No comment.
Ooh, thank you. What I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, is yes, let's get that on there to remove from the Planning Board, Planning Commission, but not from the other, from Board of Adjustment.
That is what staff has heard. If I could ask on the second cleanups.
I was just going to go to that, Mr. Marino.
Yes, I actually did have some questions about the cleanup. Since we did have a voter-approved charter amendment to change the date of our election, we are then, and Ms. Bauer, correct me if I'm wrong, we are out of sync with the certification of the election results and when we swear in council members. Is that correct? So this would be a cleanup to clear that up.
That is correct. Before we were holding coordinated elections, we followed Title 31, which is the Municipal Election Code. And so when we held our elections in April, we could myself, along with judges, I had like a little election commission, and we could certify the ballot in a timely fashion enough so that you could swear in the council member within 2 weeks to meet the charter requirements. However, when we coordinate elections, which is what we do now per our charter, we adopt Title I, which is what the county clerks use to run their elections. And that says that the election is not certified until 17 days after the election. That's the caveat to that, though, is if there is an issue, let's say you have a tie or you have a recount or whatever, that could take up to 30 days to certify the election. So what happened in 2009 and what will happen this year as well, we're going to knock on some wood and say some prayers and everything else that we don't have any problems, but we are swearing in people prior to certification of the election.
Going along, so let's follow this thought. What are you suggesting as a date? Don't be adding to more meetings to my date. What are you, I know you're going to suggest something, but what is it that you're suggesting before I start in on this list again?
Well, I think you could look at it two ways. You could look at either one option is to set a date, not even set a date, but make language something along the lines of the first organizational meeting after the election is certified. So you have kind of an open window. Another option could be to set it in January. Those are just two options that I can think of.
We're trying to keep you around, Mayor.
I know I'm getting all these dirty looks.
But you have to remember, this won't happen with this election, because this question would be on the ballot for this year. Again, we're hedging our bet. We have to be careful this year, because this would be put to the voters for the next election, which would be in 2013.
So what is our date for this election?
It is still 2 weeks. We have to follow our charter, which our charter still says 2 weeks after basically 2 weeks after the election, before the election is certified.
But is it certified on election day or
No.
when?
17 days.
17 days, which would be the 28th of November?
That's barring any complications. If there's complications, it could be up to 30 days.
Okay. So it's a floater is what it is. It's pretty much a floater?
Well, we have to do it. Our charter says we have to do it. I believe it's the second Monday. I believe it says the second Monday after the election.
Which is the 8th.
So the election is November 1st.
No, the election's the 8th.
No, it is November 1st.
First?
It's the first Tuesday of the month.
Why do I have election day here?
It says election day. It's November 1st.
Okay.
I think it's November 16th, I want to say.
I thought it was the first full week, the Tuesday first full week.
No. It is the first Tuesday of the month.
Because I'm showing...
All that changed when the Tabor law came into effect. It's the first Tuesday of the month.
Okay, so election day is actually the first.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So for this year, you would still hold your organizational meeting on the second Monday after the first, which I want to say is the 16th, but I don't have a calendar in front of me.
Well, I have a calendar. If the election is the first, and then the second Monday after that would be the 14th.
Yes, so that's when the organizational meeting will be this year, and that's when the new council
would take over.
Will be sworn into office.
The 14th. Okay. And if there's a problem, it has to move. And that's done, I would imagine, through your office.
What?
If there were a problem.
No, that'll be done through the county. We always have a member on the canvas. My office always has a staff member on the canvas board because we have issues and we have questions.
Okay.
So we are always invited to participate in the canvas board. So I will always have a staff member on the canvas board. So you'll know when I know.
Okay. Okay, back to my list. Mr. Bullock.
I guess because you're bringing this to us, and it's because we changed the election from April to November, none of this can be done administratively. We have to completely go back in and vote to change this in the charter in order to clean this up, even though the vote in the charter was to move the election. Everything else that went with that move did not correspond.
And that often happens with citizen-initiated charter amendments. So yes, that is correct. Any change to the charter, whether it's cleanup or not, needs to be a vote of the people.
Mr. Marino?
Ms. Bauer, just really quickly. So, is anything about our current system illegal, or are we just out of step with the county?
That would be a city attorney question. I'm going to say that we're just out of step. But I'll defer to the city attorney on legal questions.
Yeah, I think you're just out of step. The bottom line is you're swearing people in before they're actually certified. That's
Sure.
all.
So, I mean, the problem would occur if we accidentally, if we install someone who technically didn't win the election, if there was some kind of issue and...
A recount.
We'd have to deinstall.
So if we do go the direction, one of the directions that you mentioned, and that's the first organizational meeting after the election results are certified, that would add potentially maybe another week to sitting council members' time.
It could add more than that.
Could
if you figure 17 days is when they generally have to certify the election, unless there's an issue, then the timetable changes to 30 days. So you could be looking at 30 days.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Carson?
Ms. Bauer, correct me if I'm wrong, but this election this November will run just like the one when I was seated.
That is correct.
That's right. There has been no language changed. As somebody who won by such a small margin such as myself, yes. Did I sit up here and sweat it for a while? I did, because there was a very small percentage that I did win by. And so, Mr. Mayor, I think that your question is answered. It will run just exactly like what it did.
This year.
That's correct.
Yeah.
No
Now we
changes.
need to figure out what are we going to do for
So
next time.
if there's a problem, then I guess we get humiliated, and we humiliate the person that we swore in and that we removed, because we have no other option, right? But
We have no other option at this point.
Okay. And so what would you recommend? Would you recommend just putting it at 30 days, or is it easier to put it on the ballot that the first meeting of the month, or you have no recommendation?
You know, I would have, I think either one of those proposals that I presented to you, either A, the next
30
election.
days is free and clear?
Well.
Or is there still some?
There could be, but that's why I think by one of the two. And that would be certainly either one of those, I think, would be satisfactory. And that's A, either setting an election, holding the organizational meeting and swearing in the new council members at the first organizational meeting after the election is certified. That kind of leaves it, it does kind of leave it open, but that's, I think you're okay with that date. Or again, the second choice would be maybe looking at January, the first meeting after the first of the year. And that way, I think you've got all your bases covered as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Marino?
Well, if it be okay with this council, I would actually recommend that we follow Ms. Bauer's proposal that we change the effective date from where it is now to the first organizational meeting after the election results are certified. There's something wrong. The first one was supposed to be the difficult one in this discussion. So I don't know what's going on here, but I do appreciate the appropriate study that we're giving to this, because these are changes to the founding document of our city, and they can't be taken lightly. So I do appreciate that we're giving this the appropriate study.
Mr. Benson?
Yes, I would echo what Mr. Marino said. I think that we can just direct the staff to draft this proposed charter amendment in consultation with Ms. Bauer, and let's do it so that she's not put to having to make interpretations of the law every time maybe a problem occurs in the recount. Let's make sure that you've got plenty of time to do that before there's a certification of the election. But I think it has to be done in coordination and cooperation with Ms. Bauer before it's drafted. But that's what I would suggest.
Mr. McEldowney?
Should we translate Mr. Moreno's comments into a motion and formalize this?
And I don't know that we need a motion because we're in a study session, just some direction.
I think staff was just looking for direction. I think we've heard loud and clear that we want to change it to reflect the effective date after certification. Okay. For both of these, we'll be bringing back language to council for your review and approval before the ballot.
Okay. Thank you. That takes care of the second one, or third one, I guess. What's next?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I just had another
Mr.
comment,
Benson.
if I could. You know, back in '07, Bob Gaylor and I drafted this ordinance. I drafted it, and Bob gave me some input. We did, I guess, leave out some essential language, but the people wanted the election changed from April to November, so that's what happened, and now now's the time to correct the problems with it. But I appreciate the people of this city voting for that initiative so that we could change our elections from April to November.
Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Ms. Ryan.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Mr. Aker.
Good evening again, Mayor and members of council. For the third item for this year's ballot, I would like to bring up our Finance Director, Mr. Tinkelberg.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you is the marijuana excise tax. A couple comments about that. Number one, using the term marijuana loosely here, and with your permission, when we actually draft the ballot language, we'll come back with language that's broader than just the term marijuana. The reason for that is in doing some research, and it was purely academic, I might add. The research is...
Took a minute.
Yeah. The research is that there are a lot of synthetic chemicals that imitate marijuana and basically have the same effect on the brain. And so when we draft this language, the proposal is that it would cover that whole broad palette of synthetic imitators, or whatever the proper legal term will be. So that's the first caveat. The second is that this is proposed as an excise tax. What that means is that it is separate and over and above the sales tax. The sales tax would apply at any retail sale. However, when we write the provision regarding excise tax, again with your permission, we'll write it broadly so that it would apply to any transaction, whether it's wholesale, retail, or whatever. I don't know if you could have a different type of transaction with marijuana, but we would hope to cover all of them. So the recommendations are that the range be somewhere in that 5 to 10% range, and we need council direction as far as what percentage you would like to actually propose in the ballot language. In doing some research, again academically, it appears that 5% would generate approximately $41,000 per dispensary, and 10% would be in that $83,000 range per dispensary, assuming the same type of sales as one of the other suburban communities in the Denver metro area. So that's the first question for Mayor and Council.
Mr. Marino. See, you didn't even have to push your button. I knew you were going to get in there.
Mr. Tinkelberg, just a couple of taxes. So this excise tax would be in addition to what we currently levy in terms of sales tax on these purchases?
That is correct. The sales tax is 3.5% of all retail sales, and so this would be an excise tax, which would be totally separate from the sales tax.
Understood. And we currently have a moratorium in place. What is the date of that expiration of the medical marijuana moratorium?
It expires in conjunction with the state law as well, and that'll be July 1st, 2012, that we'll start taking applications.
Thank you.
Ms. Teeter?
Yes, thank you, Roger. I personally hope I never see a medical marijuana facility in the city. However, if one does come in, I would be for a taxing it. I just know what type of clientele they bring in. I have one across my business. It's located industrial, and I have different industries complaining. The police over at American National Bank are complaining. I guess I'm just dragging on too much, but I am for a tax if one does come in. Thank you.
Ms. Carson?
Thank you for this, Roger. Can you, I don't even know if you can answer this question, and it goes along the lines with what Ms. Teeter has stated down there. Chief Baca is sitting right there. Is this going to increase his department's calls or when we open this up? Because I guess that's how I'm looking at this, is that it needs to not cost the city money, and so whatever tax thing that we put there certainly should at least cover those types of, I'm not sure what to say here. I, unlike Ms. Teeter, I don't mind if it comes, but I do think we should tax it, and I think that we should tax it pretty heavy.
Well, according to the stories I've heard from other cities, which, it's not scientific by any means, there certainly are some calls for service that are unique to that business. But at the same time, there have been others that have said, well, it hasn't been any different than any other business that we've seen. So, you hear both types of stories. I would defer to the chief if there's any scientific evidence. I don't know.
I think the evidence is limited at this point, but I can certainly guarantee you, as any business that's regulated, whether it's alcohol or gaming or marijuana, we will be there. There will be an issue. There's an issue at every business. I don't care if it's McDonald's or Subway's or a liquor store. There will be some problem where the police will have to respond.
Okay.
Probably the best I can give you at this point.
That was good enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Marino?
Perhaps Taco Bell after the medical marijuana dispensary opens, Chief. But, so, Roger, is this per business, is this per year that this would generate in revenue, the figure that I'm seeing?
That's the estimate per year per business.
Per year per business. Well, I just want to say, Councilwoman Teeter, you're exactly the voter we're trying to appeal to with this. Is that if it comes in, then we're going to tax it, and it's going to be a revenue-producing measure because of any effects, any possible effects that it could have on the community, which should be minimal, considering the ordinance we have in place, where it is zoned to specific areas. They should be minimal impacts to the community, and this is money that we can be using for a variety of very good causes, one being public safety, offsetting any calls or needs for service the chief experiences with this. And one that I personally am very fond of, the second one on the list, juvenile delinquency programs. Let's use that money, some of that money, to teach kids about the dangers of illegal drug use, even though medical marijuana is not, under state law, an illegal drug use. It is still a narcotic under federal law. Let's use some of that money to teach a valuable lesson to our kids. So I agree that it should be taxed. I don't think I'm going to agree, Ms. Carson, that it should be taxed as heavily as you might like it to be, because there's a point in there where you tax it to such a degree that no medical marijuana business will ever open up in the city, and you de facto prohibit it once again.
Okay. Can we go on that motion?
And that's something I will not support. I do want to make this a revenue-producing measure, but I do not want it to be another way of making sure that those that do not like this new industry get their way of prohibiting it outright.
And I apologize to you, Mr. Marino, for trying to make a joke of that. Mr. McEldowney.
Given the extensive discussion, I will simply echo Mr. Moreno's eloquent comments. He's doing well to state what's in my head tonight, so I won't waste words.
Thanks. Mr. Benson.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Tinklenberg, I understand Mr. Marino's point about raising the tax so high that nobody would want to come in, but what is the highest rate? And I'll ask Ms. Stevens this also. What's the highest rate that we could legally go to that wouldn't, where we'd actually be able to collect the tax? I hope that it's something higher than 10%, but I don't know. What do you think it would be?
I mean, it's not like an interest rate, so I think you can tax it. I think you have authority to impose whatever sales tax the community deems is appropriate.
And at what point do we get to the point where it's an actual prohibition, which is what Mr. Marino was referring to? Maybe that's an economic question.
I think that's driven by the market. I mean,
Right.
Truthfully.
I mean, it's not going to be 100% tax. I'm just saying that 10% I think is too low. And we ought to put some more thought into what that rate ought to be.
We certainly can do additional research to see, what other cities have done. But I would agree with Ms. Stevens. I'm not aware of any limitation on home rule power in terms of setting the rate. I think you can set it wherever you want it.
Okay, sir. Mr. Diaz?
Actually, my question is relatively simple. I understand that we're on a moratorium, but how many dispensaries are actually looking to open in Commerce City right now? None? Okay. I didn't know if any of them were coming forward, and that's why we're bringing this up. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Carson?
The first thing that I want to say is that we really should refer to this as medical marijuana, because that is what this is about. It is a prescription that somebody has to get from a doctor. This isn't recreational use marijuana, what we're passing. One of the things that I will say about the tax is that I don't know how many of these facilities are going to be around, and so we really could be bringing in a lot of customers from a lot of places if we don't do this right, and we could really have a run on the city where all of our roads, our police, and so I think we really do need to pay attention to this and make sure that we're comparable so that people aren't coming to our city to do all the business here. And I agree, Mr. Marino, that you don't want to totally drive them away, but it is what it is, and it should 100% be something that citizens in the city are comfortable with, and so that's why I said I think it should always be referred to as medical marijuana, because that's exactly what it is. And I think it should be something that this city does not feel the brunt of, and that we're doling out money then out of the city for the police department for extra calls, whatever that is. So it needs to more than pay for itself. But so I don't know how we do research to find out what everybody else's taxes are, but I certainly would like ours to be high enough that people aren't driving from everywhere to come here to get their medical marijuana.
Ms. Snyder.
So I just want to see if I have this right here. So we're going to bring in a marijuana shop, and then we're going to use the tax revenue to teach our juveniles not to smoke marijuana. Is that what we're saying?
I don't think we're proposing to bring in a marijuana shop.
Yeah, I know, you know what I'm saying.
Right.
Roger, sorry. Okay, I'm just trying to take that all in. Thanks.
Mr. McEldowney.
Every time we have the discussion about medical marijuana, it turns into sort of a quick window into people's perceptions of the medicinal value of this product. Certainly there are elements that abuse the privilege of medical marijuana as a course of treatment. And I'm quite certain that Ms. Teeter, who unfortunately is not here to hear this, has had personal observations due to the location of the certain business near her place of business. But I'm often surprised by driving by and having to do a triple take on a location that I would never think of was one of these operations, yet it is. And the latest one that I saw was driving through Cherry Creek over the weekend, and there's one that sits right on the corner of, I think it's First and University, that I would have never in a million years guessed, the location would be used for that, but from all outward appearances, it was any other little shop in Cherry Creek. So we have wasted extensive breath on the paranoia around these operations. I'll say it again, as I've said it before, we have a phenomenal ordinance in place that guides where they can go. I think a reasonable excise tax on top of that or in conjunction with that existing ordinance makes great sense. The research that I've done, again, not scientific by any means, shows roughly 5% is the average for the cities that have employed an excise tax. We could certainly go higher if we wanted to do so. I think the point is there is a natural limit to the number that could be cited in our community, given our ordinance. So there is a natural ceiling to the amount that we could ever collect by applying an excise tax. So I think it's important to separate, all that said, separate the discussion of medical marijuana presence in our city, yes or no, from the question of an excise tax, should one come. So with that said, if we focus our discussion on an excise tax, should it come, I think the question is a number, 5% or 10%, and what do we have staff carry forward?
Mr. Marino?
Mr. Tickenberg, for a ballot proposal, is a percentage, a defined percentage necessary on that ballot, or can that be something that this council decides after a tax is approved?
I believe we'll have to specify the percentage in the ballot, but I would defer to the city attorney.
Yeah, I absolutely think that that's correct. You would have to specify exactly how much you'd want to have.
Okay.
Mr. Bullock?
Mr. McAdowney said everything I would want to say, much more eloquent than I could have ever said it. So I'm going to defer to his remarks because he put it all on the line. Thank you.
Mr. Tinklenberg, I think I have a consensus here to put it on 10%. Was there another question?
There is. The question was, where do you want to direct the revenue if there should be revenue? Staff had recommended public safety and juvenile delinquency, and I should put another word in there, prevention programs, not juvenile delinquency programs. So.
That and drug rehab.
Oh, God. Let's get, we have people in the executive session that are already back there, so if we could get something here that maybe if public safety is where this cost is going to go, that maybe that's where the money goes. Does anybody have a challenge with that? Mr. Marino.
I would be supportive of public safety being a recipient.
Okay.
I feel like there are other areas of our city that also could benefit from the money produced or money generated from this endeavor or from these businesses. So yes to public safety, but I also don't want to preclude that money going other places that it's needed. And I just want to quickly follow up on what Councilman McEldowney said about where these locations can locate, where these businesses can locate. And if you saw a map, I wish we had one, you would see where exactly in our city they can locate. And the Planning Commission, to their credit, had extraordinary foresight to say that to protect the community but still allow the industry to come in. And as a facility locates in one part of the city, the map shrinks because they can also not be located within 1,000 feet of each other. So what we're talking about is a very small possibility that multiple facilities can come in. To your point, Ms. Carson, I don't think they would all come rushing to Commerce City because if one locates here, the map shrinks and there are fewer and fewer places for them to locate.
Okay. Just as a comment to that, we set those limits. And I know there's at least one person out there campaigning for our council who part of what they're saying is, once I get there, we will change those numbers. So we can change them just as easy as we set them. And you need to understand that that's in there. And you need to know it's on the street now. So don't use that as, once you put one in, 1,000 feet is safe. Because when we set those numbers, you can just as easy get 5 people on this council and change them again. And we do have a candidate who has said, once I get there, that will be one of the things I will take care of. So keep that in mind, just as an aside. Can we end this now, you think, and get into executive session? Yeah. Do you have another question? I knew you did.
No, just to clarify then, is it the 2 items we mentioned here? You used the term public safety, and I wasn't sure if you were using that broadly or if you just meant it to apply to one of these 2 items.
Public safety is, I would think, the police department?
Correct.
Is that how we read it?
Mr. Cordero.
I'm sorry, Mayor and members of council, the clarification that we need is our staff recommendation in terms of the utilization of any future revenue was for both types of uses. And we wanted to gauge from you if you'd like any future revenue to be used for either one or for both, public safety or juvenile delinquency prevention programs.
Mr. McEldowney.
I guess the question is, for the ballot language, isn't the critical component the percentage that the excise tax draws? And can't we make a general statement about the application of those funds to help guide the voter? I mean, we don't have to be explicit in the ballot language about 2.2% will go toward juvenile programs, and, I mean,
you have to be explicit about the percent that you think you're going to have. And then you could say, to be used to fund public safety, juvenile delinquency programs, amongst other things, or something
can you say
along those lines.
generically as public safety and youth programs?
Mm-hmm.
And leave some latitude in there so that once we see if we even get the dollars, then you have some latitude in how you can program those dollars based on need?
Yes.
That would be my recommendation.
Sounds excellent. Ms. Carson.
I would like to see it just public safety, because I'm under the belief that if somebody's going to vote on something, they want it more explicit. When you just said in youth programs, what youth programs? And right now, I think this is an area that the city is venturing into that we've not been into. And I think that at a later date, you could come back and ask that to be changed if we find that we have a surplus of money and public safety doesn't need it. Does public safety not have the ability, though, to take that money and run those juvenile programs? With that, if we say it all goes to public safety, can they not? Because I know the chief runs a lot of juvenile programs. Could you not just divert the money?
If I could answer on his behalf, a lot of those are run by the Parks and Recreation Department in cooperation with the police department, but Parks and
But the police
Recreation.
could put on their own, whether it's the DARE program or whatever.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, if you put in there a limit for public safety, right? This is the purpose of this tax is to fund public safety. I don't think you can then move it to something else without getting a voter approval.
Well, that's what I
to move
said.
it.
No,
Yeah.
you would have to come back.
But quite honestly, not to pick on the chief, but public safety is a pretty big portion of the budget. I can't imagine you're going to have a. You see what I'm saying? So if it goes to fund public safety, then there will be funds from that we would normally allocate to public safety that could be used for other things. Does that make sense?
It does.
So it's
does.
a large portion of the budget. You're not going to.
But
I
the
don't
other
think you're going to
question I
raise more than
have
that.
is, could public safety then fund a juvenile program if they chose to do that?
I think so. I mean, you'd have to make a colorable argument on how that fell into the public
Okay.
safety realm. But yeah, I think that's true.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Believe me, we can create anything like that.
excellent.
I need to turn it back over to Mr. Cordero.
Okay. I'm not going to be the first one to go in that room.
All right, this is the this is the penultimate slide. So thank you for the clear direction. In terms of timeline, we will come back to you with the 3 items for this year's ballot by August 22nd, which is the deadline, as I understand it, by which, no, September 3rd, but I think we looked at the meeting schedule, and so we have to have it to you and have it approved by City Council, the language, by August 22nd. And then we will prepare factual information for the public, create a marijuana tax advisory and action committee, and put it in place by August 1st, providing them that factual information. And then, and that's, of course, provided that you guys, that City Council approves the language that we bring you on the 22nd. Any other questions?
Mr. Benson?
Yes. Mr. Cordero, on page 87, the last bullet item, you said staff also will present next steps in a strategy for City Council's consideration regarding a future sales tax initiative.
Say that again? Which page?
87 of 153.
Is that the council
It's under City
communication?
Council requested tax measure ballot questions. It's the fifth bullet.
What is your question, Councilman Benson? I don't have that.
Is that something that's also going to be addressed? I mean, just a general, when you say future sales tax, do you mean sales tax that would be put on the ballot for this election, or an election past November 1st of this year? When is that going to be talked about?
Well, let's break it up for a second. So for this year, that statement reflects what I just spoke about. So it will be the specific language that we draft in terms of the marijuana excise tax. I think for the longer terms initiative that we spoke about earlier, it's really not. It's not going to be staff's recommendation. It's actually going to be the recommendation from the committee.
So you're saying that anything regarding just a general sales tax increase is not going to be discussed for this election? It would be the next election, or is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not necessarily saying that it's going to be a sales tax item. I'm not saying that it's going to be in this election, and I'm not saying it's going to be at the next election. I think that if it happens in the way I showed you in the process earlier, it would be out of that committee that the recommendation would come, and the recommendation could come in the form of a sales tax. It could come in the form of a bond election. I couldn't tell you exactly what it will come like right now.
Okay.
Mr. Flannery?
Let me try to recapitulate what I thought I heard there. You have the longer-term items, which follows the chart that Mr. Cordero just had up there. And those are 12 and beyond. The short-term items, which would be on this ballot, are the ones that were presented tonight. It's not our intent to preclude the council from putting anything else on. Those are the ones that we have specifically identified through the retreat process.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Now entertain a motion to go in executive session. You can read the motion off your agenda. Ms. Snyder?
Yes, move to go into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations concerning a potential economic development project in Commerce City.
Mr. McEldowney?
Second.
A motion and a second go in executive session. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, the same. We'll be in executive session, hopefully 15 minutes.
Able to discuss things with people appearing at citizen communication? I mean, I know you want to pinpoint that to the exact moment that it's time, but only you know when that moment can occur.
He said to keep going.
Okay, keep going? Okay. We are back from the executive session. No action was taken. Information was exchanged. Next item on the agenda is council discussion and possible action on Adams County referral for a certificate of designation for a medical waste treatment facility in the county's I-2 zone district. And I want to bring to council's attention in the packet under administrative council business, this is an item regarding the proposed medical waste facility located at 8620 Brighton Road in unincorporated Adams County. Mr. Aker or Mr. Aker? Okay.
In your packet was some information put together by city staff. We were planning, but it's at council's pleasure, if you wanted to have some specific questions. We do not have a presentation, but we do have a staff member here that could answer any questions that the council may have as a part of your discussion and potential action. If how would you like to move forward on this?
I'm waiting for somebody to light up until somebody's name comes up. I know this isn't a great topic because it got me in all kinds of trouble the last time when we went out and picked up all that area north of 88th in the industrial area. But sometimes this challenge would not have come up had we continued on our plan to build our borders to our borders. The challenge is, and I know that, I talked to a lot of those people this morning, and one of the gentlemen even realized that this is going to be in our city one day. We get notification because one of our citizens is at least observant enough to realize that it's going on and to bring it to us. Some of the people that were there this morning were saying they've been dealing with these people for 2 years. So this is not a new thing. My biggest concern is the county has no real dog in this fight. They could put anything on that space they want. They could care less. We've got a little piece of land up in our neighborhood that has been an eyesore for as long as our neighborhood has been there. It's in the county. You call the county, they won't do anything about it because they just don't care about it because it's completely surrounded by Commerce City. This is the same thing that's going to happen here. We need to at least make some kind of a statement to the county. And I understand when these people came up here and said, we talked to them and they just don't listen to us, because I've seen that in other cities and other places when citizens come up. But, if this is going to be something in our city at some time in the future, we need to take a pretty strong stand on this because the information that I've seen come out of this is not encouraging, let's say. Okay, now I've got some people up. Mr. Benson.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, if this property was in the city, we would have more control over what happens. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Then I would suggest that we get busy annexing this property so that we do have more control over it. Because it is going to eventually be annexed at some point, and I don't think we want to be annexing this medical waste, whatever you want to call it. It's medical waste, whether they treat it or something falls on the floor and gets washed into the Platte River or whatever, our water treatment facility, whatever. It's not something that I think that we want. I would just ask for some comments about us going forward with an annexation as fast as we can to sort of shortstop what the county might be doing.
Well, I'm not exactly sure of the surrounding neighborhoods, but I don't think we can do an enclave annexation. Is that correct? And so, Tom, do you want to?
That's correct. It is our understanding that we've got a little piece of property within Brighton Road, which has been annexed into Commerce City. We do not have the contiguity to annex this property. We've looked at it before. We also do not have the required completely surrounding it for 3 years. So we are unable to forcibly annex it at this time.
So we're unable to do that at this time? How long
forcibly.
would it take?
They could come in willingly,
Okay.
since we do have some connection, but even then we'd have to take a look at the contiguity to see if we could even annex them.
I think whatever it takes, we need to look into that because we don't want this locating. As I said a couple of weeks ago, anytime somebody has some garbage that they want to dump first thing that they think about is Commerce City, and this is just the latest example of that. And we need to let people know that that's just not the way that they need to be thinking these days.
Okay. Ms. Carson?
It just seems way too close to residential. This can't be the first facility of its type. Do they typically set them up, does anybody know, in residential areas, or do they set them in outlying?
I'm going to have Planning Manager Chris Kramer try to address that question.
Good evening, members of council. As Tom mentioned, my name is Chris Kramer. However, I am in no way related to the Kramer-Fiore Industrial Park that this is located in, thankfully. Yeah, the medical waste treatment disposal site, there is actually another one in Adams County that the Adams County Commissioners approved a few years back, so this would actually be the second in the county. Staff did make a determination, not this staff, the county staff made that there is a community need for this, though, in their findings. So while there might be an existing one, they felt the applicant had proved that there was still demand for these from even Adams County facilities.
Is this medical waste all generated in our county, or is it coming?
According to from the staff report, it is a local supply for the most part. I believe it was up to 75% would be located here in the metro area.
And unincorporated Adams County has plenty of land down there in the industrial area, do they not? I guess I shouldn't have asked you that.
I should clarify. I think, and Tom stated this already. The Planning Commission hearing is this Thursday. Staff is more than willing to take direction and go speak at that public hearing to provide whatever recommendation or input that the City Council wishes. I can tell you staff has sent a letter prior to this coming to light. Basically, our staff's recommendation is they need to have a neighborhood meeting, which the Adams County staff also recommended that they not vote yet and that they require the applicants to have a neighborhood meeting. There was a neighborhood meeting, I believe, held today, but it was
nobody showed up.
Nobody, yeah. It was canceled because it was at 10 o'clock, and the Adams County staff was very clear. They felt that that was a poor time that, in effect, eliminated people from having the opportunity to have their voice heard. So that's why they're recommending that the case be continued.
Now continued from Thursdays?
Correct.
Meeting?
Basically, they're recommending that for all intents and purposes, the Planning Commission meeting on Thursday be continued until August so that they can have what I would call wonderful. A real neighborhood meeting. That's what our comment letter reflected from 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, there were actually about 35 people there this morning, and some of them very upset because they actually took time off from work to be there, and they didn't even have the courtesy to send a person there. They put a ill-written sign up on the door. So, Mr. Bullock, you're next.
As much as I want to believe that they're going to do the right thing, I don't believe it. I believe that to say that they would like to put this off and have a public meeting in August and everything is just a stall tactic so nobody shows up at the Planning Commission meeting and voices any opposition to this. I would love to give direction to staff from our council to go to the meeting to ask what is the capacity of the other medical waste treatment plant and how much they are using it and why there is a need for a second one, get all this information, and voice our opposition to the fact that this is not being put in the right area. Basically, that's all we can do, because all we can do is voice opposition to the fact that as a city we would not like to have it here. They're never going to actually volunteer to be annexed into the city because they're doing too much outside the city that we would actually shut down if they came into the city. So that's just my recommendation. I would love to get a consensus from the rest of council that says send staff and send them with a harsh no from us, but that's only me. I still need 8 others on this council to say that's what they'd like to do also.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just
Sure.
clarify Councilman Bullock's statement. The Planning Commission hearing, what the actual process that they're going through is for a certificate of designation, which in this case ends up being the land use portion. The technical aspects of this have already been approved by the state. So if the council is going to consider a recommendation to the county commissioners of denial, staff would certainly encourage the council to use sort of land use reasons why. So a capacity and those technical reasons, they outline, they have a pretty thorough engineering report. They would be able to answer, if they were so inclined to approve it, they would be able to answer those questions. So I would encourage the council to direct staff to use land use reasons as a basis, and their findings that they have to use include those land use categories. So if that's what you're going to attempt to find out, the land use categories would certainly be the direction we would want to consider.
Okay. Ms. Teeter.
Thank you very much. I have so many things to say. I would suggest that we, the City Council, have a letter, print it up or whatever. We'll all sign that. I think that would be very effective. And will we be limited when we do attend this meeting? And how will we know if it's been extended into August? And then I have some more things to say after this is answered.
We won't know that, and Mr. Mayor, members of council, we won't know that until the actual Planning Commission meeting, because the Planning Commissioners will vote. So 1:30 at Thursday,
right.
Staff will make their recommendation, and the Planning Commissioners will consider that and decide, do we want to continue it or not?
And if the ones on council who do attend that and we're able to speak, are we limited on our concerns, or you want us just to go forward with it?
I think Mr. Kramer brings up a good point that
Use the land use.
Certainly the land use is a key foundation, but I think you certainly shouldn't limit yourself to appeal to other issues. If your land use is a foundation, then you can appeal to them on a number of other fronts. And we would be happy to put together a letter
opposition
for you in advance of that. It may be hard to get everybody's signature, but we'll do our best.
Okay. And lastly, well, I agree with you, Mr. Benson. My third year when seated here as council at large, it was at the old City Hall. We had a chemical storage place that wanted to come into Commerce City, and it happened to be some of the people were going to CML, so we didn't have enough there to override the Planning Commission. But the applicant came forward to the microphone just like you. And I looked at him and I said, "Sir, where do you live?" "Well, I live in Centennial." And I said, "Well, that's great. Why aren't you proposing to have this built there?" I said, "I am sick and tired of everything coming into our city and being a dumping ground. We have Denver wastewater treatment plant, the Superfund site once here where we're sitting now in the Arsenal, and things have changed. We're not going to take this anymore. I think we have an agreement with everybody up here that we are sick and tired, and we're going to send a message that we are not going to take this lightly anymore."
Thank you. Mr. Marino.
Just want to echo my support for Councilman Bullock's request that staff attend, and with a message from City Council of denial, as well as Councilwoman Teeter's point, a letter or a resolution of some sort, so we can make our stance clear on this.
Okay. Mr. Benson.
I agree with all of that, and I think that any of the issues that you might want to use, I think that should be left up to our staff, because you all know what issues need to be raised. If you think the land use issue is the most important one, then certainly that needs to be raised, but any other issue that you've got, I think that needs to be the call of the staff.
We'll make sure you have a copy of the letter if you are intending to attend the meeting.
Good. Ms. Snyder.
Yes, I just want to echo what everyone else is saying, and to Councilman Bullock's discussion and Councilwoman Teeter, I agree wholeheartedly. We really do need to stand firm on this to the maximum that we can, to try to fight this.
Ms. Carson.
I don't know if you can answer these questions or not. One of the gentlemen was up here talking to us about the proximity to water and this and that. Is there, and has there been contamination into water facilities with some of these other facilities around?
Contamination with other similar medical
From-
waste facilities?
Correct, yeah.
Good question. I don't have the answer to that one. We can certainly ask Tri-County Health Department if they can help us with that sort of research. What I can tell you is the plan for this proposal is for, the autoclave that they're going to use is basically, and I'm not a scientist, but it's a high-pressure steam process that sanitizes the waste. When they're done with that steam, right, there's a byproduct of water. They test for that. They test that water to ensure quality, but nonetheless, even after they test it, it still just goes into the regular South Adams County Water and Sanitation District sanitary sewer system. So
if there's homes around there, and I mean, I can't imagine it's going to rain down on them, the steam, but it is there. Would it, if you had a vegetable garden, is there some way that could?
according to the report, the steam is contained within the structure, which is within the autoclave itself.
It's not released. Okay.
And the autoclave is actually also then within an additional structure.
I thought the steam was released. Okay.
According to the report, it's not, but
There are emissions, though.
there are emissions, which they have permits for those emissions, but supposedly the actual steam itself.
This doesn't sound like anything healthy, but maybe there's a need for it, but maybe
I
not
would
in this
say
area.
it's very interesting. I don't know if the word's serendipity or not, but we had in a jurisdiction that I worked in the middle 90s when I was probably in Chris's position. We had a same facility, and the council at that time fought it, defeated it, and it went to court because they were actually technically allowed in the zoning. I learned a lot more about these facilities than I ever dreamed. My guess, if this was state-of-the-art, pristine, structure and that type of thing, you might be a little bit more confident that there were things, that were going to be maintained. I'm not disparaging this use or disparaging the user, but I have a feeling that it's not going to be pristine. And the opportunity for rags and gauze to be outside or falling off a truck while it's being brought in, and rain occurring and drainage from that. There's so many opportunities, I think, that, in my opinion, present a hazard. That I think, having it not there is one way to make sure that we don't have to face that hazard.
Mr. Bullock?
It seems like the more we talk, Chris, the more work that is being heaped on you before this meeting. But in doing your due diligence on this, would it be possible for you to check and see in the metro area how many of these kind of facilities they are, what type of equipment they're using as opposed to the equipment that's going to be used here? And it's, when the gentleman got up and spoke about the fly ash, it gave me an alarm that they say what they're going to do, but they only do what they have to do when they get caught. So, I mean, what I would like to see before anything is done is that every T is dotted and every I is crossed, or vice versa, however you do your I's and T's. But, it's just, I don't have a lot of faith in the company that's doing this they talk a good standard, but do they actually keep it up in the long run, or after nobody's looking, do they just do what they have to do to get the money and the job done?
1:30.
So we will research. We'll try and partner with Tri-County and see if they can't help us get a listing of all the other medical waste facilities in the metro area.
Yeah, and not just in Adams County, because
in the whole metro area.
Yeah.
Because they're all. I don't think that they have to be specific to the county in which they're located. So hospitals that are in Lakewood or Douglas County can still bring their waste to one of these proposed facilities. So we'll research that for you. And then I should note, staff is aware, while this is not in the city, staff is aware there have been a string of issues associated with basically the industrial park developers and the county. And the fly ash is, I think, an example of that. They use that as basically inert fill to raise elevations for buildability, and I think, and this is probably stating it modestly, and so residents who live in the area nearby, can probably attest better than I can, but I think that's been done in a very haphazard manner that's caused a lot of problems, and to the point where sometimes if the city becomes aware of it, it extends beyond just a local Adams County jurisdictional issue. So I do know that the actual applicant in this case, I don't know how many issues they've had with the residents in the area or with the staff. I do know the industrial park developers, though, have had a number of issues. So
what I think I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, anybody on council, is yes, we definitely want you there. Yes, we don't want this to go through because it doesn't seem to be appropriate. And going along with something Mr. Benson said that works with this, maybe staff better start looking at getting some of this land back in our hands. We did it, and now's the time to do it. Because if you get it done before November, they can blame it on me, and the next guy can come in and say, you know what, if I'd have been the mayor, I wouldn't have done that, but we got to make the best of it. And get some of this done, because the county's going to continue to do this because they don't really care one way or the other what goes into that space, because they know eventually, like somebody came up and said, it's eventually going to be ours. And what a great time to get it done, so you can blame it on the guy that's going out.
Even the fastest annexations with willing parties is,
but it's a
5 to 6 months. Yes,
It's
absolutely.
a start.
I just wanted to mention that.
Yes. Oh, no,
Secondly, I wanted to
do it.
mention that you'll have a letter tomorrow morning for you to look at.
Okay. Any challenges on council? Any challenges with you, sir?
And just to clarify, the letter that we're putting together and the feedback that we're going to be giving at the Planning Commission hearing, the council is not really, we're blowing right past any recommendation for them having a neighborhood meeting. What I'm hearing is that there's some doubt as to whether or not that really is well-intentioned. Council is going straight to the recommendation for denial.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Can do.
Okay, Ms. Teeter?
And I would like to say something. I don't mean to prejudge our commissioners. We have a very good relationship with them, and I think they're going to have their ears open once they read this letter, and they'll take it in some consideration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, anything else now? We're still in it. No, wait. We're still in administrative business before we go into long-range financial plan. Is that correct? Does anyone have something for administrative business? Mr. Bullock. Don't even push your button. I already got you.
Mr. Kramer, have you heard of any rumors of any other medical waste facilities trying to start up within our borders?
Have I heard about rumors? So I don't know what our policy is for stating what we've heard as far as rumors. I will tell you the rumor I heard.
Okay.
The rumor I heard was that this facility, knowing that they may be up against it in the county, was looking for similar locations in the city. Not a new facility, not a new company, but the same one.
The same company.
That's a vicious rumor. I have nothing to base that on. And
we'd like that one to be true because we'd like them to come to us.
But, if they come under conditional use,
correct,
a lot of times they can come in and do it without, and it'd be administrative. What I would love for treat any rumor you hear with due diligence, because I heard the same rumor, and I heard that there might be a little bit of truth to it, and so who knows?
Well, Just to clarify, if they do come into the city, I'm pretty sure they would require a conditional use permit, which would not be administrative, require a vote by you. So you would get to exercise a lot of control, including whether or not they would get to do it.
Okay, Ms. Teeter, did you have a comment?
Something else about council business, a different one. Is
okay.
this the time, or are we still in discussion?
Administrative, not reports.
Right.
Administrative, yes, Ms. Teeter.
Oh, okay. Mr. Flannery, I got a couple phone calls from some parents from 27J, the high school, and I believe they said it was the Memorial Day Parade and the scholarships that were handed out, that all of them were for 14 Adams County. And they contacted the principal of the high school, and he wasn't aware that they were ever approached by the city. I'm not saying that's true, but is there any way in the future that we can make sure that this information gets out to the students in 24J? I love 14. I attended the school district there, but we need to teach both school districts very fairly, I believe.
Will do.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Snyder.
Yeah, City Manager Flannery, I sent a message out to you and staff right the very next day after the first storm that we endured, when there were a lot of downed trees across the city and that kind of thing. I had received several phone calls from folks that wanted to have a dropping place that they could possibly bring their limbs and bigger pieces that couldn't go to the trash. And so I just wanted to let everybody know that called me and asked me about that I did come to staff with that request. And I believe there's 3 other cities that are doing it. City Manager Flannery, if you might just give a brief report as to why staff decided not to go through with that.
Yeah, I believe that when we looked at it, the cost to do that was one item. The second was that the damage wasn't widespread enough to actually cause the sites to be created. And I think that was more of it. And I think the crews went out, and actually under reports, I was going to give the Public Works staff a real positive response, because there was a lot of news stories, and those news stories were about Commerce City and the helping hand that we were providing a lot of the neighbors in chopping up trees and getting disabled individuals out of their houses so they could get out of their houses. So it was really positive, but there were a number of things. And maybe Tom, Mr. Aker, would like to add a couple things.
The only thing I'd like to add, and this is for, I think council got my message, but for the public as well, Waste Management will pick up your tree limbs if you cut them into smaller, I think it's like 6 inches or 8 inches, and bundle them. They'll pick them up as part of your regular trash collection as well.
Well, I just wanted everyone to know that I did it, that their phone calls and when they were checking in with me, that did not fall on deaf ears. I did forward that on to try to get that site set up, and just wanted to have it explained to the public why that didn't happen. So thanks.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yeah, just to add on to Mr. Aker's comments, I was going to say the same. I mean, based on our agreement with Waste Management, we're allowed fairly large item curbside service, and so I actually had to do some regular old tree trimming, not due to storm damage, and I put out probably 5 bundles that were, yay big by yay big, and I've done it multiple times before, and those are always picked up by Waste Management without any special arrangement. You're able to leave that at your curb. So.
Okay, thanks, Jace. It was a pretty nasty storms.
Mr. Marino, your name comes up and goes away. I don't know whether...
I was waiting until the end of when people had their business.
Okay. Ms. Carson?
I don't know who to direct this to at staff, but I have not evidently been put on the emailing list for the E470 board. Did that letter go out that I am going to be the alternate, or does a letter need to go out?
A letter does need to go out, and I need to check that status.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Marino, is this yes or yes? Okay.
Wanted to let council know that I did receive a invitation to return to the White House, and this specific forum will be directed towards council members that serve in cities that are suburbs of large metropolitan areas. and we will be able to have direct interaction with senior administration officials like Valerie Jarrett and Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood. So I think this is a really unique opportunity, and I'm really excited for it. I will have to miss next Monday night's council meeting, and I wanted to ask for council's support to miss that meeting. And once again, this is an opportunity in which it requires no additional appropriation from the council. I will be using the allotted funds for this, the personal discretional funds, and the other members that will attending from the Denver metro area include Mayor Jacob Smith from Golden, Councilmember Eva Henry from Thornton, and Councilmember Patrick Anderson from Centennial.
Okay. And not for anything you said, but Ms. Stevens, I always run into this challenge with discretionary funds, use and not use, and I don't want to make a call one way or the other. I would rather somebody who had some legal backing would do that. Just not that we wouldn't put some funds to do this, but it just, we need to figure out how does that money work and what's it for and how do we use it. And
Well, it sounds to me like maybe you would like a policy on this at some
that
point.
would be wonderful.
And so I think my understanding of the use of this funds, this would fall within it. But I understand that it's a kind of a amorphous issue, and it gets brought up a lot, and so maybe I'll chat with Mr. Gaylor when he returns to see if there's a way to kind of get a more concrete policy so people have a good idea of when when the topic comes up, when they can use it, when they can't use it, and so you all don't have to feel like you need to get a legal opinion every time you want to use those funds.
And I wasn't looking for this particular
Yeah, no, I
item.
understand. Yeah, I think you're looking for more general guidance, and hopefully we can come up with something.
And the challenge, and Mr. Marino did in fact do this, the challenge is that in the past, people have used discretionary funds without coming to council to ask for permission. Again, Mr. Marino did this, but to stop that from happening, because a question comes up, then they call me and they say, what had happened? I said, well, it's discretionary funds. Did they come to council to ask? Not when I was there, but that needs to be part of the policy that council needs to approve it.
I think that needs to be clear, because quite honestly, I'm not aware that that was part of the thought. So that's one of the concerns that you all would like to see addressed. So I'll relate that to Mr. Gaylor when he returns and see if we can come up with something.
Yeah, because I mean, the money is finite.
Yes,
it's,
absolutely.
You know, and it eventually runs out, and then you have to come and ask for more. But I would like to see the council do as Mr. Marino did. Please, I'm not picking on you. That a request has to come to use that money for trips like this.
Okay.
Just so that at least the whole council knows where you're at and what you're doing.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, maybe come back to you with a policy at some future date that you all could comment on and tinker with?
That'd be terrific.
Okay.
Well, is he still going to be able to go?
Yeah, I think, does anybody have a challenge with him going?
No, I don't.
It's just this brought it up, but anybody have a challenge with him going? I don't see any, so have a good trip. We'll miss you on Monday, but, it'll probably snow back there. So, no, actually, they're getting massive heat. Okay, Ms. Snyder.
Yeah, I agree that with the mayor, we do need to have some kind of policy set up, because just as an example, I was invited to go with the Rapids, the Colorado Rapids, to the White House and, represent the city with the team. And, I put it out there to council, and the general feeling was that we shouldn't spend any city dollars, rather they be discretionary or other, if I was to go to that, which I understood completely, and I chose not to go. But so I think it's, you kind of have to say, okay, and that Lynn Hallowell has said to me that anything that we used for discretionary funds had to go through Bob Gaylor. There was another situation with the Jeremy Bloom Foundation, which is a total charity. I wanted a couple of tickets to go to that out of my discretionary, and that was also questionable, whether or not I could just have one or could I have none. It was kind of going back and forth. So I think we have to be careful if we say, yes, this one can go, but this other one can't. It just seems like we need to set some policy for how that's going to go. Thanks.
Yeah. Mr. Bullock.
You know, we did have a policy on this, especially when it came to nonprofit events. Like if CASA was having their event that they're having it on the 21st over at Ballesteri Vineyards, it's to benefit a program that benefits Commerce City in the long run, and you could use your discretionary funds. And that was basically one of the things that was part of the policy. The benefit, how it benefited the city, not how it benefited the individual, and how it benefited the city in the long run. And so, I mean, I can remember there is a partial policy on this, but now that if every, I guess we're going to have to bring it back to council and staff and say, not only this, but is it good for this and that too? Because I was going to use discretionary funds for that. Now I don't know if I'm going to do that, because even though it's a fundraiser for a worthwhile event, is it worthy of our discretionary funds? Even though CASA is one of the events that we even give with our foundation money to. I don't understand where we're drawing the line, but it seems like, profit, nonprofit, for fun, or for something that's going to be educational, that's going to bring something good back to the city, where do we draw the line and how do we draw it?
Ms. Teeter. Oh, sorry. Ms. Snyder.
Yeah, I agree with you, Councilman Bullock, and I think that if it's a fundraiser for a 501c3, I don't see any reason why we couldn't use our discretionary funds to go to those. And of course, you're going to want 2 tickets. You're not going to want to go by yourself. That's pretty much standard for any event that we go to. You're going to want to have 2 tickets. So I guess I was a little discouraged the last time around, having to kind of go round about the Jeremy Bloom Fund, our foundation dinner. So, I think I personally feel like we should be able to go to a charitable event that's a 501c3 and be able to use discretionary funds for that. So I do think we need to sit down and take a look at that again and see what we're going to do.
Okay. Mr. McEldown.
I was just going to suggest that rather than have the debate tonight, that we ask staff to come back with some suggestions around this and get it on a future item for study.
I think that was the direction. And I think the reason we need the policy is so that it doesn't become personal as to who's asking. So the rules are the rules. So, okay? No problem with that direction?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Long-range financial plan. Mr. Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I believe that Mr. Tinklenberg pretty much addressed that, and the team addressed that during the last item. Excellent.
Reports. Mr. Flannery. See that? I've been gone for a couple weeks, and I get it right.
Mr. Mayor, wanted to, I think I mentioned the kudos earlier to staff throughout the city, not just the Public Works staff, but in planning, Public Works and PD. They did call an emergency operations center, as you know, and it was very active. We were actually watching the events, and it's pretty amazing to see 2 storm cells actually merge together above Commerce City and see what was happening from there. So very interesting. I wanted to mention you received an email from Mr. Alan Lee today. Literally as I was preparing for this item, Mr. Lee sent me another email thanking me for my follow-up email mentioning that once the ordinance is submitted, that the employees approved, which they have as of last Friday, then all it requires is a signature, and it's initiated from that point on. And you all received a copy of that as well as staff. And then lastly, and I wanted to bring Mr. Jim Hayes up so he could say a few words, but Mr. Hayes is our new Community Development Director. We stole him from North Glen, and the city manager last Friday at the lunch made sure he He docked me a few points when we had a conversation, said he wanted to steal some of our employees now. But Mr. Hayes also worked for Pulte Homes, and a long time ago, he actually worked for Adams County. So I'd like to ask him to say a few words to council and introduce himself.
So I'm no longer going to be able to go out and have breakfast with Joyce, the mayor? Oh, man. I can't go out with anybody from Jeffco now. Now I got to go into North Glen. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Jim Hayes, new Community Development Director. Thank you for a very entertaining first day so far. A lot to work on. I'm probably going to assist Chris on Thursday since I still have some friends back at the county, and maybe we'll get some things done over there. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. As Mr. Flannery mentioned, I've spent most of my career in Adams County, and I really do love all the cities here, and I'm really, really excited to have the opportunity to come to work for Commerce City. A lot of the things we did in North Glen, hopefully I can take some of the good things that I learned there and apply those here. And the things that didn't go so well, we'll make sure not to repeat those mistakes. I'm open for any questions. I know the hour's late. You probably have my bio and everything, but just want to say I'm really happy to be here. So
And we're glad you're here. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Just welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Is that all you had? Ms. Stevens?
I just want to let you all know that I know that you've been getting like monthly updates from Mr. Gaylor on what the city attorney's office is doing. He was working on that before he went out of town, so you will be getting that. It's a little late, I know, but he'll be getting that. He should be back in town on Wednesday. I will be happy to see him, as I'm sure you all will be. And so he'll be back. I anticipate he'll be back in the office on Wednesday, so you'll be getting that update in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marino?
No report.
Mr. Benson?
Yes, thank you. It's been about 2 weeks since we had our last meeting. I'll try to get through this very quickly. First of all, tomorrow night we're having a Ward 2 meeting at Stellado's Grocery and Deli, 6 p.m. tomorrow night. Back on June 28th, we had the kickoff for the 104th and Highway 85 project that's going to start any time now. I guess it already has started. That same afternoon, the same day, I went by Adams County Middle School for what they call I guess it's the Adams County Summer Camp for kids at the school. I think they had about, 200 kids in that program. It's a very good program for the summer. Keeps the kids involved, keeps them out of trouble. As you know, sometimes in the summer there's nothing else to do, and kids will try to find something else to do. On June 29th, we had a meeting with Xcel Energy at the Stewart Middle School, and I think that a lot of good things were said there, and I think that that meeting had an impact on the Xcel people about this proposed 24-inch gas pipeline, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get something worked out with them prior to the time that construction starts. Also on the 29th at E470, I think it's been mentioned that Ed Delozier was the... Okay. Excuse me. Do y'all have anything to say?
Yeah, we're waiting for you.
Right.
Keep going, sir.
Thank you. Ed Delozier was the executive director of E470 for 10 years. He was going to be the president of the international organization this year, but he died about a year ago, so they built a patio out in front of the E470 office. So we had kind of a dedication and barbecue and hamburgers and hot dogs out there that was on June 29th. June the 30th, we met with 27J to go over their mill levy override. That's going to come up for those of you who are in School District 27J. The schools need the money. I mean, it's been pointed out many times, I think, both to this group, the council, that we get less state money than any other metro area school district. And so it's got to come from someplace. And I know the money that's been raised in the past, the bond issues that were passed in 04 and 06 went to build Prairie View High School, Prairie View Middle School, Turnberry Elementary School, and Stewart Middle School. So the money's being used well. We just need another high school down around, I guess it would be Buckley and 96, and that's where this next money would go, in addition to hiring more teachers and things like that. So I would certainly encourage people to help out on that particular mill levy override. On July the 1st, we had the Badge and Honor ceremony right here in these facilities, and I've got to say that there are times, and there were at least 2 incidents that occurred in the past year with cars accelerating, bullets flying through the air. I think we did have one officer that was hurt, but these gentlemen put their lives on the line. They can go out to a call, and within 2 seconds, the whole thing is accelerated into a life-threatening emergency. When you've got bullets flying through the air, you don't know who they're going to hit, and if you happen to be there, your life is in danger. And that's what these guys do every day, is that they put their lives on the line for the rest of us. I want to congratulate the chief and your officers, the way that you've handled your job as chief of police here. July the 2nd, we had the reunion 4th of July celebration. July the 3rd, of course, we had the city 4th of July celebration over at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. And my only request is that we need more American flags. We didn't have as many this year as we had last year, and we didn't have as many last year as we had the year before that. We seemed to run out of flags before the soccer game started. We just need more American flags. How much do those cost? Anybody know what they cost? Anybody know what each flag costs?
Mr. Bullock, please don't encourage him.
Each little flag.
Yes.
No, but go ahead. No, I thought we need more flags to hand out. I mean, it was the 235th birthday of the United States of America, and a lot of people wanted flags. There were 2 people who told me they were communists. I told them I'd try to get them a Chinese flag. They said no. One person was a citizen of the United Kingdom, and she didn't take a flag either. I didn't blame her for that. Then this weekend there was kind of a picnic and for Ed Perlmutter out in Wheat Ridge, and this morning down at the state capitol there was a hearing in front of the State Reapportionment Commission. The State Reapportionment Commission redistricts state House districts and state Senate districts. The legislature, the General Assembly itself, redistricts the congressional districts, but this is for State House. And so I testified there, and I said that I wanted Commerce City to remain in one district. There's about 77,000 people that they try to get into one House district. We've got about 45,000. We've got places that are right next to us, like DuPont and Monaco and Henderson, Irondale, Welby. I think if you include all those areas of unincorporated Adams County, you can come up with one House district that'll be well represented, be a good House district for this city. Anyway, that was my testimony, and I would maybe at some point we can get around to having the council pass a resolution to whatever effect maybe the council doesn't want that. I don't know. Well, I guess we can find out later on. But that was my testimony this morning. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Mr. McEldowney, do you want to make a correction now?
I'll wait until my comments.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Carson?
No report.
Ms. Snyder?
Yeah, I just have a few things. First of all, as City Manager Flannery mentioned, Commerce City employees are now AFSCME Local 1144, so it's looking like that's pretty much done. So just wanted to say that they've gotten that finished. And I attended Ed Perlmutter's volunteer picnic over the weekend, and that went well. Attended a town hall meeting with Mary Hodge, and it was resources for small businesses, and it was really a good meeting. She had several resources from different areas come in and do a pretty good, each one of them had a specialty area that they had, and she had them come in and speak, and then they had booths around so that someone could get information, and there was a lot of people there that were either had a small business going or were interested in getting a small business going, and I was very impressed by that meeting, so I wanted to thank Senator Hodge for that, and I enjoyed being at that. Also attended Fourth Fest. Everything went great. We didn't have rain this time, so hallelujah for that. We had a nice, enjoyable Fourth Fest on the 3rd. Wanted to thank Barry Gore and ACED for the comprehensive study of the 2011 legislative session that he sent to all of us this last week. I've been combing through that and will probably continue to do so for a little bit longer, but it has a lot of really good information in it. Wanted to let everybody know that I am looking to plan a Ward 4 meeting. Haven't had one for a long time, so we're going to start looking at dates and see when we can get that together. So looking to get that going. And the last thing I had was an update from the Public Safety Crime Prevention Committee. Wanted to let you know that this is something that I think is pretty important, and I'm concerned. But the House of Representatives Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies Appropriations Subcommittee approved a 2012 bill that would eliminate the COPS office and its programs, which is both hiring and technical assistance, has to do with the BURN, JAG, the Second Chance Act, and the Juvenile Justice Grants. They're cutting $1 billion, or it's proposed to cut $1 billion from the state and local government at a time when cities are already forced to make cuts to public safety and personnel. So fewer public safety jobs lead to more crime, and I'm sure the chief could attest to the fact that if we lose those grants and that grant money, that's going to be a significant loss. So National League of Cities, and in particular the Public Safety Crime Prevention Steering Committee, is pushing hard to ask Congress to reject these cuts and to preserve the funding. So I just wanted to let everyone know I will be staying on top of this and working on it. Thanks.
Ms. Teeter?
Yes, I have two things quickly. Mr. Clements is no longer here. He left a little earlier, but I am so happy that Highway 2 and 96th Avenue intersection is almost completed. It is a joy to have a left-hand turn lane onto Highway 2. Hallelujah. It took 10 months, but it was well worth it. And lastly, to you, Chief, unfortunately, the badge and honor ceremony that I usually attend, that was the first day of the 4th of July weekend, and I was not in state. So if you could share that apology with your officers, I'd appreciate it. And I'm very proud of all of them and how they put their lives in harm's way. Thank you.
Mr. Diaz?
All I want to do is I want to echo Maura O'Neill's comments during citizen communication earlier. Unfortunately, Mother Nature was not kind to us in terms of the Music in the Park concert series last Thursday. When the tornado warnings went off, we figured that was a pretty good sign that we shouldn't do anything that night. So hopefully you guys can join us this Thursday at 6:30 over at River Run Park for what is now our first installment of the Music in the Park concert series. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney?
Thanks. Just I'll give one quick update. We, as Mr. Benson mentioned, had a joint meeting with School District 27J, board and administration members, and a handful of representatives from both Brighton and Commerce City. Thornton was not present, but was presented to by the school district the following night at their council meeting. And again, the subject was regarding a mill levy override that is being talked about for this November's ballot. Just to clarify a comment made by Mr. Benson, this is not about the district receiving fewer state dollars than other districts. It should be noted that every school receives the exact same amount per pupil from the state. The challenge is the dollars that each district gets through mill levy overrides over and above that state minimum. And the concern is that District 27J, based on the current mill levy override, has just $53 per student over the current state allocation. The next closest school district in the state is Douglas County, and they have $582 per student to work with, over and above that state allocation. Our own Adams 14, who passed a mill levy in 2007, actually has $697 per student over the state allocation to work with. If we compare that to the top two school districts in the state, Boulder has $1,960 per student over the state allocation of roughly $6,000 per student. Littleton, $1,914 per student. The challenge is this: the district has not passed the mill levy override in a decade. The only measure that's passed was a bond initiative several years back to build Prairie View High School and Prairie View Middle School. The remaining projects that they have funded in the district have been funded through existing allocations, through existing capital funds that they had to affect those programs. As I mentioned a few weeks back, the school district has essentially lost roughly $12 million in revenue. up through the current period of time over the last 2 years. So the question of a measure to add dollars to operate the district, to put books in classrooms, to preserve class sizes, to educate our kids, not just in Commerce City's Northern Range, but in the county, in Brighton, in Thornton, is absolutely critical. So I would encourage folks throughout the community, this is not just a Northern Range issue, this is a Commerce City issue. We talk about economic development, we talk about business attraction and business retention. You don't attract businesses if you don't have the educational system that will help support a workforce. And without the dollars, we're going to continue to see the quality of education decline. Fortunate for us, 27J has done a phenomenal job of squeezing every possible value out of the few dollars that they get over and above that state allocation. But there is a point where you can no longer squeeze blood from that turnip. So I would just ask that folks do your homework. If you're on Facebook, look for the 27J Parents, Community and Parents for 27J group. Get connected so that you can be aware of activities and events that that group will be at to promote the mill levy override and to talk about those funding issues. One of the things that's been most interesting to me is how few people are aware of the funding situation in 27J. If anybody's interested, I've got a little flyer. I can make a copy or get a copy for you. It clearly shows in graphic terms where 27J sits relative to the other districts in the metro area. Stay tuned. I think that parents group is going to need volunteers to help canvass, to help call, et cetera, et cetera. So if you don't have Facebook, let me know. I'll put you in touch with, or you can reach out to Joan Niss on the school board, who will also give you information about that group and ways to get involved. And I'll wrap my update up there. Thank you.
Mr. Bullock?
Yes. First of all, I would like to give kudos to the staff for their what they did after the storm. Mr. Flannery said somewhat, but if you over in front of Bank of the West on Magnolia, the pine tree in front of it completely blew over, and it was showing nothing but roots, and they went over and chopped that up. There was a lot of trees that the staff just went over and got the chainsaws out, chopped it up, took all the trees away, and no one had to even ask for it. They just saw what a need was to be done, and they got the job done. I also want to thank them for Monaco. I've been getting complaints about Monaco for the last 2.5 years. When is that street going to get paved? Well, it's ground down to nothing now, so I know they've got to pave it unless that's all they're going to do is ground it down and then we just ride on a rough street. But something's been done, so I'm happy about that. And it's from 60th all the way down to 72nd that they're doing the work. So it's going to be one smooth ride from one end to the other almost. The chief, that was a great badge and honor ceremony. It was really moving, it was touching, and a lot of officers were honored that went above and beyond the call of duty. And it's just like Mr. Benson said, every time they go out, they don't know what they're going to encounter. So they're really putting their life on the line every night and every day. The 3rd of July. In years past, I've had residents tell me that they didn't think our fireworks displays were as good as they used to be when it was at Fairfax Park. Well, there isn't one resident that could say that this year, because the fireworks display we had this year absolutely was top bill. And the only people that don't think it was that great happen to be on staff, and they say, well, you know, we used to do it better when we did it ourselves. And, you know, and so they can criticize because they used to do it. The kickoff ceremony for the highway project on 104th and Highway 85 was on the 28th, and we attended that. And the Excel meeting over at Stewart Middle School was very interesting, because I really do believe that Excel came in kind of with their mind made up, and they left with a big question mark, because they realized that maybe putting it where they want to put it isn't the right spot. Because one thing that they heard, that they're going to put the pipeline down and nobody will be digging in their easement except them, because down the road, they're going to bury their lines, their overhead lines, and so they'll be the ones that hit their own pipe. So I think they thought about that long and hard and said, well, maybe we better look at someplace else because we'll leave it at because. But I was also asked, we're supposed to have a joint meeting with Thornton. Does anybody have a date on that yet?
Thank you, Councilman Bullock. We've made several attempts to get in touch with the city council and the city manager's office in Thornton and have not gotten any replies. That's why we don't have anything scheduled yet.
Okay, thank you.
We're still trying.
I will be out of town from Thursday till Monday, so if you're looking for me, don't look for me in Commerce City. Thank you.
Okay. I'm glad to be back. I want to thank again Mayor Pro Tem Snyder for filling in for me. And Mr. Marino, just one more time, I have to kind of stick you a little bit. I don't know if you have people who already think we have the marijuana here in Commerce City, because I don't know if you saw the report that just came out. They picked up the bus here. There was 1,200 pounds they seized from a warehouse here in Commerce City. They were bringing in 400 pounds twice a week. I don't know whether the police department was part of that or whether that was a big federal thing, but that's a lot of grass, medical or not. I'm not going to go through anything else. If there be no further business come before this board, let's get out of here. Drive safe, going home.